Welcome in. Happy Monday afternoon. Thank you for joining us here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Across from me is the fabulous producer, Carlene Bragg.
Hi, it's me.
I feel like I'm still hoarse. Like I feel like
my throat's kind of we're both at weddings, so
yeah. Just trying to recover from the
yes.
It's not even the recover as in what you might think recover,
sure.
But like it was the when the music's playing, you gotta raise the level of your voice,
of course.
And so I did a lot of yelling to say hey.
Oh, I was cutting a rug too. I was full on dance performances, choreography.
And we both had long drives.
We
back.
Sure did.
Carlene had a 7-hour drive. I had a 6-hour drive.
We made it though.
We made it. It was a great time.
Great time.
I had a great weekend. Carlene, you had a great weekend.
Sure
We were
did.
just talking about some of the stuff we can't talk about. Not saying it's bad, but it's just none of your business.
It's none of your business.
It's none of your business. But
it's our business.
It's our business. But it's Monday. I was glad to be back here in Charlotte, and Carlene and I both missed it, but we both were keeping our eye on this. We're not talking about the NFL or college. No. We're talking about NASCAR. We're talking about Roval 400.
Right.
Let's take a look at this.
Take a look. That's outside the track.
Oh man!
Yeah.
And folks, a lot of folks leaving today.
Yes, yeah. You see some RVs across the street, but like I was talking to Jane about this shot earlier today. Like that green yesterday wouldn't be there.
Oh yeah,
all that
for
green,
sure. It is.
It would be packed. The souvenir trucks look like they're getting ready to go. Yeah. I mean, they're clearing down, but it was an exciting day.
I saw some of the pictures. Some folks I know that were there. It looks like they had a great time.
Great time. Beautiful day for it.
Beautiful day
Gorgeous.
for it. A great day overall. It was a little nippy where I was.
Where you were? Because you were DC,
yeah,
Baltimore.
DC, yeah.
I was in Pittsburgh, and it wasn't that bad.
It was a little cool.
I was dancing a lot though, so my body was warm.
It warmed up.
It warmed up,
but it was a little cool. But it was glad to be back here, and I like 75 degrees, 77 degrees yesterday, something like that. Yeah. So
stunning.
Yeah. So I'm glad to be back. This is a shot again outside of Charlotte Motor Speedway as folks start to return home. I know folks, after you have a great weekend, you want to take that Monday off.
Yeah, we should have.
But we're here,
We're
and
here.
we're here to inform.
We're so happy to be with you, but you know.
A lot to get to.
Yeah.
So who else is going to bring it to you? I mean, it was a lot to get to. We had to be
Yep.
here on Monday.
Yeah.
Look, I know you're wondering what is Monday, but what the rest of the week looks like as far as the weather. So let's check in with our Becca Birdsall for a full look at our forecast.
The high temperatures over this next week will really tell the story. It will be a warm and muggy start as we go into your Monday and Tuesday. High temperatures close to about 5 degrees above the average high for this time of year. Wednesday brings the chance for rain, thunderstorms, and clouds, which is why we'll drop down into the upper 70s. Behind that cold front will be a big push of dry and cooler air down into the 60s for the high temperature by the time we get into Thursday. Our average high for this time of year is 77, morning low of 55. So today and tomorrow will be above that. Next 48 hours, we do have this surface high pressure system that's working to bring in some tropical moisture, which is why today will be cloudy, will be muggy with those high temperatures in the lower 80s. Then we'll be watching for our next cold front to push across the eastern half of the United States. Ahead of it, this is going to bring in some scattered showers and some thunderstorms, especially going into your Wednesday. In the meantime, spotty showers is what we have on the forecast between Monday and Tuesday. Rainfall likely on Wednesday. And as that cold front continues to sink down to the south, it could potentially have a low pressure system develop on it, which is why Saturday driving in some isolated rain chances, at least for now. Satellite and radar, we do have cloud cover across the area. It is dry though. There will remain an isolated chance for a shower at any point during the daytime hours. Just not going to be impressive. We'll have the same chance to do it as we go into your Tuesday as well. Fast forward into Wednesday. This is 8 a.m. Got a couple of light showers across the greater Charlotte area, but here comes the heavy downpours over towards the mountains, Ashwaubenon and Avery counties, becoming a little bit more scattered between about noon through about 3 o'clock across the greater Charlotte area going into the afternoon. Look at those darker reds. That's indicating some heavy downpours, potentially some stronger storms with this system. We'll carry those rain chances all the way through about Wednesday night before drying off by early Thursday. Adding all the rainfall totals up, it's going to be highly dependent on where that heavy band of rain sets up. Could drop anywhere from 1 to 2 inches. For the rest of us, about a quarter to up to half an inch between now all the way through about Wednesday night. Big push of colder air will be coming by the time we wake up to Friday morning. Upper 40s, then we'll gradually warm up with those morning temperatures into the lower to middle 50s. Our coolest low temperature so far this fall has been 52 degrees. Actually occurred last Friday. We'll have a chance to challenge that going into your Friday. Live view from our WCNC tower cam. Those are the clouds I was talking about. Temperatures warming up into the lower to middle 70s out there with dew points in the 60s. So just a little bit of a muggy air. Harvest supermoon is tonight. This full moon typically occurs in September, but actually is in proximity to the autumnal equinox, which is why this year is on October. Historically, farmers use the light from the moon to help them gather crops. Peak illumination will be at 11:47 tonight, so just before midnight, and it will be appearing a little bit bigger and brighter. So look towards the eastern horizon just after sunset to get the best viewing. We'll have a chance to do it again tomorrow night as well. Jerry Hunt Supercenter 7-day forecast. Again today, above average. Monday and Tuesday, mostly dry as well. Wednesday, rain is likely with a couple of thunderstorms as well. Drier and much cooler air arrives by Thursday.
All right, so that is a look at your full forecast. All right, so we are now actually, do we want to pivot to here at home, Charlotte City Council? Okay, all right. Sorry, guys. You know, this is what happens on Live Impact News. I see something in the preview screen. I just have to ask to make sure. But, okay. So happening right now, Charlotte City Council is meeting. Charlotte leaders are meeting about stadium improvements. Bank of America Stadium, which is in Uptown where the Panthers play, where Charlotte FC plays. And you may remember the story from, I believe, late last year, early this year, when it was proposed to do some improvements to the stadium. A $650 million investment in Bank of America Stadium when it comes to improvement projects. So again, City Council is meeting about it to discuss it. So let's take a listen in to what city leaders are saying.
to continuing that partnership with them and look forward to executing the documents. Again, I'm going to give a shout out to the legal team and finance because they put a lot of work over this negotiation with the team for the last year. I just want to thank them for their support. And then lastly, Sean, really want to thank you for all the work that you poured into it. Really thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you.
And so
Let's vote.
let's vote. All those in favor of the Bank of America Stadium Modernization Ground Lease to submit to the City Council for approval, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you very much. Congratulations. Over to Todd DeLong for guiding us through it. My Vice Chairman, I need it.
Tell them to come back.
That's fine. I want to talk to no, I'll catch up with him. I'm telling him to drive the ship for a second or two. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. So today is an extension of the conversations we've had over the last two committee meetings that were focused on a few different asks from projects and programs and additional questions around the appropriate funding sources for how we participate in helping those projects and programs succeed. A few of the key takeaways today is just talking about the available and recommended funding strategies, as well as discussing the significance of having partnerships that deliver significant benefits to the surrounding communities, and then end up with a requested action from the committee to get this moved forward to City Council for a decision. So the four projects we'll be talking about and that we talked about over the last two committee meetings are the Excelsior, Spangler's Market, Do Greater, and the Institute. All four of these were mentioned in the previous two committee meetings. We did spend a little less time.
All right, so you're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Carlene's here. Jeb is here. And right now you're watching, so Charlotte City leaders, Charlotte City Council is meeting right now, but we wanted to take you to the point where they were discussing some major improvements to Bank of America Stadium in Uptown. That's where the Panthers play, where Charlotte FC plays. So we're going to come back out here and we're going to take a quick break here on Live Impact News. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. All right, welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Carlene is here. Jeb is here in studio. We want to talk about some big news in the world of sports. the Panthers won.
He sure did.
I was telling Carlene that I got back just before the game, and man, let me tell you guys, I had no expectations. I just wanted to watch the game. You know, we do the weekly show. Myself, Eugene, Jeb
Right.
filled in last week for the show.
Yeah.
He held it down
Sure he did.
as well as he could. Carlene is on the show, and so I'm like, I got to watch the game. I can't come in here on the show and not know what I'm talking about.
Right. Well, you're also a fan.
I'm also a fan,
Right.
but it's hard to being a fan right now. Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I was thinking going into the game. So we get into the game, first quarter, 17-0. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I am ready
Bleak.
to go in
Right.
on Thursday.
Right.
I don't even want to watch this game anymore, but I have to,
Of course.
research purposes. Okay. Second quarter, touchdown. All right.
Turning
Field
it
goal,
around.
17-10. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to get my hopes up,
Right.
but it's a ball
We
game.
keep our expectations to the ground.
Right. Also, shout out to Eric Collins. He was the play-by-play guy. He does the Hornets games. He brought that energy to the Panthers games. He did a really great job. He's gone viral
Great.
for his calling the game. He's
Fantastic.
amazing. So shout out to him. Hopefully we can get him on the show.
Would love. Call in.
The game just flipped around. Rico Dowdle, your South Carolina Gamecock brethren, 209 yards, 206 yards, 209, over 200 yards on the ground. Played well. I said, man, I didn't know South Carolina, you know.
Yes, you did. We produced
know.
talent.
I didn't know. I
understand
didn't know.
that
I
you
didn't know. I didn't know. I
that.
didn't know South Carolina.
Yes, you did.
I did. J.C. Horn had a good day. Xavier Legette, another Gamecock, played well. Comeback game for
Yeah.
Xavier Legette.
Yeah,
And I was thinking the whole time, Carlene will be proud.
I would be proud. I was proud.
So that the Panthers
We're
won.
prouder than the Bills.
I'm not gonna drag
Well,
this-
the Bills were gonna bill. I
Oh,
knew
the Bill-
that.
yeah,
the
the
Bills.
Bills, the
If I can
Bills.
count on them doing one thing, they're gonna bill, and they're gonna bill on prime time in
The
front
Bills
of
are gonna-
everybody, in front of the whole congregation.
The Bills are going to bill.
Yep.
You know, I'm gonna wrap this up because the Panthers won. I don't want to jinx this next week. We play the Cowboys, but also we have something live happening right now. I was going to toss
Oh,
into
yes.
Carolina Panthers content, but we actually have something live happening right now in Newark, New Jersey. Secretary Sean Duffy, who is Transportation Secretary, is holding a press conference on the impact of the government shutdown at Newark Airport. So let's take a listen in. He just got to the podium.
The operation of the federal government. So they're required to show up for work. And when they come to work, I want them to think about the departures and arrivals of airplanes. I want to make sure they keep Americans safe and airplanes safe. But what the consistent message was from these controllers was they're not just now thinking about the airspace and the jobs they have to do in these towers or TRACONs or centers across the country. They're thinking about, am I going to get a paycheck? And their paychecks should come a week from tomorrow. And so now what they think about as they're controlling our airspace is, how am I going to pay my mortgage? How do I make my car payment? I have a couple kids at home. How do I put food on the table? I'm working 6 days a week. Do I have to take a second job and drive Uber when I'm already exhausted from doing a job that's already stressful, to think about how I can make extra money because the government may not provide me a paycheck? So in a job that's already stressful, this shutdown has put way more stress on our controllers at a time when they're already working on equipment from the 1960s, 1980s, 1990s. We asked them to do their jobs on equipment that has not been state of the art. We asked them to do their jobs on old equipment and keep our airports operational at a time when they don't have the best equipment at their disposal. And so I wanted to hear them out. I wanted to hear their concerns and make sure that that those who shut the government down, I want to make sure that Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries know that this is not consequence free. There are issues that arise throughout America that impact our everyday lives, that can impact our safety when you shut the government down. And again, up in the tower, these are great American patriots. They're American citizens who are serving the American people. And I think it begs the question, why? Why would Chuck Schumer want to shut the government down and focus on people who are not American citizens and their health care. And issues that are going to evolve over the next weeks and months, that he wants to shut the government down today. And again, I want to be clear, do I think they're more stressed right now in our towers? Yes. Is our airspace unsafe? No. Right? If we think there's issues in the airspace, we will shut it down. We will close it down. We will delay. But again, it's creating a ripple effect for our controllers. Not only that, many of you know what Essential Air Service is. So Essential Air Service provides airline services to communities that normally would not get it. Right? So we give some subsidies to the federal government that in smaller communities to give them service from the airlines. That money runs out this Sunday. So there's many small communities across the country that will now no longer have the resources to make sure they have air service in their community. The number one user of this airspace is Alaska. Again, you don't have roads in Alaska. They travel by air, and a lot of these are small communities. Alaska will be impacted, but every state across the country will be impacted by the inability to provide the subsidies to airlines to service these communities. Long-standing program, bipartisan support in the House and the Senate. It's an important program, but we don't have the money for that moving forward. One last point. Many of you have heard me talk about surging air traffic controllers, making sure we get more controllers through our academy in Oklahoma City. And then when they get out of the academy, they have to be trained up. And we have a lot of training facilities across the country, but the support staff that train those controllers when they're through the academy are at risk of being laid off. And so what this can do is we're trying to bring more air traffic controllers into the system so we have less delays, less cancellations. It's more challenging to get those students through the academy, but then also trained up in facilities like right here in Newark. So these can have longer lasting impacts at a time when we're trying to supercharge. This shutdown makes it more challenging for us to actually do our jobs. And again, this doesn't just end after the Democrats decide to open up the government. It has a longer lasting impact on our ability to make up the ground in the shortages that we have right now with air traffic controllers. So this is having great impact, great concern, great stress on our system at a time when we're trying to reduce the stress. We're trying to improve the efficiencies. We're trying to increase controllers. We're trying to modernize our airspace. All things that the American people care about. And this shutdown, again, that Chuck Schumer wants to have because he wants to fund illegals' health care, makes no sense to me. I think he cares more about, and should care more about, what happens right here in the New York airspace and across the country, as we want to make sure we have air travel safe and controllers focused, not on their mortgages, not on the next paycheck, not on food at the table, but actually on making sure you and your family are safe. And so with that, again, I'm delighted to have the president of the Air Traffic Controllers Union, NATCA, Nick Daniels, here with me. He's going to say a few words, then we'll go to Frank McIntosh from the FAA to say a few words, and then we're happy to take any questions from all of you. Nick?
So good afternoon. I am Nick Daniels. I am the proud president of NATCA, the National Air Traffic Controllers Association. I want to start with saying that I'm going to leave the political discussions for the politicians during the shutdown. Today, I'm proud to speak on the behalf of the dedicated American worker who operates the national airspace system and ensures the safety of over 3 million passengers and tons of cargo each and every day. I'm here to advocate for the end to the shutdown. We need to bring this shutdown to a close so that the Federal Aviation Administration and the committed aviation safety professionals can put this distraction and put this distraction behind us and completely focus on their vital work. This work does include fulfilling Secretary Duffy's goals of accelerating the hiring of air traffic controllers he just spoke about and modernizing our air traffic control system. Both initiatives are long overdue and require our immediate and our full attention. We do not have the luxury of time. We do not have time to waste on the unnecessary distractions created by this shutdown. So our message is clear. End the shutdown. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Frank McIntosh. I am the Air Traffic Organization Chief Operating Officer, and it is a privilege to be here. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Secretary Duffy and Nick Daniels for being here today. Once again, we went and saw an air traffic control facility staffed by men and women, air traffic controllers and technicians. Professionalism and safety is beyond reproach. And you see that amidst a very difficult time, a time of confusion where they show up, come to work, and keep people safe. What's on the line for us right now? We have a lot of momentum, thanks to Congress, and $12.5 billion of a down payment of a modernization of an air traffic control system. We have a surge of air traffic controllers, per Secretary Duffy's plan, to get us healthy. I want to speak about Newark specifically. 24 controllers out of the 37 allocated, 9 in training. They are finally on the right path to get healthy, to provide critical services to this airport. I need those 9 individuals that are in training to just concentrate on becoming controllers and not add any other ambiguity to what they do day in and day out. You take that to 313 other air traffic controller facilities that are facing the same dilemma. Our controllers need the best. We're on the way of delivering that, but we also need to make sure that we come together and ensure that we remove that ambiguity and make sure that a government shutdown is not prolonged and we do not lose the momentum that we finally gained over the last 9 months, 10 months. We need to ensure that everybody understands what our controllers need and what they deserve. Our technicians are in the same boat. We're in the process of modernizing a very complicated air traffic control system. Any disruptions put us further and further behind. Is the air traffic control system safe? Yes. Secretary Duffy nailed it. It is very, very safe. But we have to be on the forefront of making sure that our air traffic controllers and technicians have the very best. When they have the very best, you have the very best. Let's please collectively get behind this, and let's make sure that this government shutdown is over in a hurry. Thank you very much. I'll go back to Secretary Duffy. Thank you.
Again, we hope there's a time and place for discussions with politicians. And again, this is a continuing resolution that maintains funding at its current levels. There's time to have disagreement, but there's real impact on the great work that we're trying to do. And by the way, this is bipartisan work. America cares about the work that we're trying to accomplish here. It's not, blue or red. It's American, and this is truly having an impact on our ability to accomplish those goals. With that, if you guys have any questions for any of the three of us, we're happy to take them. Yes.
So, have you seen any increase in sick calls since the shutdown began? And if so, what happens when there's an operationally significant number that call out sick?
So we're tracking sick calls, sick leave, and have we had a slight tick up in sick calls? Yes. And then you'll see delays that come from that, right? Because again, our priority, I want to see your flight not be delayed. I don't want you canceled, but our priorities are safety. And so if we have additional sick calls, we will reduce the flow consistent with a rate that's safe for the American people. So we've had a slight tick ups, and they've been in certain areas, and we are managing that following that. Yeah.
So I want to ask about 2 other projects in this region that have been affected by the shutdown. The Hudson River Tunnel and Second Avenue Subway over in New York City. The rule that your department has highlighted as part of the reason why there's an ongoing review is not in the Federal Register, and it was the draft that was posted online was posted after business hours the day before the shutdown. When you say to critics who say that that's indicative of this being political, motivated to sort of spread the pain of a shutdown around.
So you're talking about Second Avenue Subway and the Gateway
Yes, sir.
Project. Just let's be clear. These are the 2 biggest projects in the Western Hemisphere. They're massive projects. Several months ago, I sent out a letter telling everyone who receives federal money to follow the law. And again, this is in regard to disadvantaged businesses. So there has been a tendency with some of these projects to look at race and sex as a disadvantaged business as opposed to the size of the company as a disadvantaged business. this is unconstitutional. It's contrary to law. And so we had sent out notice. Again, months ago, we let them know that this was going to go under review. When the shutdown happened, our Civil Rights Division, most of it was furloughed, so the review process is going to take longer than what we would anticipate. So that's the process in which we're working through. And again, this is not shocking to anybody. We've expressed our concerns months ago, and now it was brought to fruition before the shutdown. And again, I don't want to see these. The president in his budget fully funded these projects. We're not trying to shut down these projects. To the contrary, we're trying to make sure these projects move forward fast. They're important. But the question is, why would Chuck Schumer, who says he cares about the projects, shut down the government so we don't have the staff to review the contracting authority used on these projects, and is it done constitutionally? Yes. So how long can the system run safely? So for essential air service, that is going to be impacted as of Sunday. It was going to be Thursday. We found some more money to put into it. We're trying to do the best we can to keep this process with minimal impact. The controllers have to show up for work, right? They have to come to work. They're part of our critical infrastructure. The problem is they're going to show up for work and they're not going to get paychecks. And like everybody here, these are working men and women who rely on their paychecks, and they set up their payments consistent with when their paychecks are going to come in. And they're going to do the work. They're not going to get the check. And again, they have bills they have to pay. So now they're thinking about that at the same time that they're controlling the airspace, which I don't like that. That is not. We want them to leave their personal problems at the door when they go into a tower or into a facility. And again, they've expressed those concerns to me. They're going to be there. They're going to continue to work, but they might actually have to take. Someone were saying, well, I might have to pick up Uber. I work 6 days a week in the tower, and I might have to pick up some Uber jobs. So they come in and work tired, exhausted, because they're trying to make that extra money to make ends meet, all the while working 6 days a week to keep you safe in the airspace. Yes. So absenteeism as a concern, again, we've had a few airports and we're tracking it. We don't have one facility that has had long-term issues with the sick leave, but that is concerning to me. And if someone has to take sick leave to drive Uber to make the difference, those are decisions they're going to make themselves. But of course, that's concerning for us. These are high-skilled, high-performing, safety-driven professionals. That I don't want them driving Uber. I don't want them finding a second job to pay the bills. I want them to get paid for the work they're doing today, keeping our planes in the air and our skies safe. Yes?
Yes, Secretary. Go back to the comments on the Legal Development Commission. Are you saying that their DBE program is illegal?
What I'm saying is it's up for review, right? And so there's been issues in New York not using it appropriately. Again, looking at the race and the sex of the business as opposed to the size of the business, which is what the law was intended for. And so we're going to do a review because of what's happened in the past in New York. And again, we've been quite clear with New York and with others that that's the review that we're going to undertake. And so it's happening right now. And again, it's going to take us a longer time because we don't have the staff that's been furloughed because of the shutdown to get through that review process. Yes?
Thank you, Secretary. With Republicans having control in both houses of Congress and the White House, can you just explain why you are saying that it's up to Democrats to open up government? Is the term that you used. Have you seen the polling from the Washington Post that shows 47% of people say it's Trump and Republicans are responsible, but only 30% say it's the Democrats? And how is this possibly an attempt to change that narrative?
So that's a great question. The question is, Republicans control the House. Republicans control the Senate. Republicans have the White House. I know you know better than you know my answer is. You know the answer to this. In the House, Republicans passed a bill to fund the government, continue the funding levels the funding streams that were in existence at the end of September. The problem you have in the Senate is that you have a filibuster rule. It's a 60-vote threshold. So Republicans by themselves cannot pass what the House passed. They actually need Democrats to vote with them to fund the government. And if Democrats say no, again, there's over 50% of senators in the Senate who have voted to fund the government. And by the way, it's been bipartisan. Several Democrats have voted to open up the government and to continue the conversations and negotiations. But when a majority of Democrats in the Senate say no, you can't get to that 60-vote threshold. So when I tell you that Democrats have shut down the government, it's Democrats who have withheld votes to prevent us in the Senate from getting to 60 votes, and therefore the government shuts down. So it's a 60-vote threshold, not a 50-vote threshold in the Senate. And again, if Leader Schumer wants to do a one-off and say, for this vote, you don't need Democrats, we'll just go with a simple majority, that's great. And it'll open back up. But he's using his leverage point of the filibuster rule to make sure the government stays shut down, because you can't get to 60 votes without Democrats. That's a problem.
And what about the polling?
I haven't seen the polling to which you refer, but I look at this and Republicans, again, have tried to just continue funding at current levels. Republicans have tried that. Democrats have tried to say there's other things that we want in this bill. And again, it does beg the question, why are we so concerned about illegals' health care? Why is that an issue? Again, we should care about Americans. We should care about American citizens, Americans' air travel. That's who we were elected to represent. And I think the Democrats are misguided in what their priorities are. And they should focus on the American people as opposed to those who've come to the country illegally. Yes?
This is two-parter, if that's okay. First, you mentioned the modernization efforts and the $12.5 billion down payment. Have those efforts actually began, and has the shutdown actually impeded those efforts or the funding? And the second part, are Republicans looking at any areas of compromise with Democrats to open the government back up?
So, to take your first question, so in modernization, what we've done is tried to pull as much money forward as possible in all kinds of areas. I'm not trying to maximize pain. I'm trying to minimize pain. I'm trying to pull money forward and use money to make sure that we do all we can to function as well as possible. So we are continuing with the modernization effort. We're selecting an integrator, a project manager that's going to help us with this. I don't want it, no offense, Frank, but I don't want the FAA to manage this project by themselves. They're not project managers. So we're hopeful that that selection is going to be made by the end of this month. And that work is continuing right now as we go through that selection process. I would just note that we do have $12.5 billion out of $31.5 billion. A key component of that money that I don't have is the money to build the new software. Again, I'm using like a Windows 95 or a Windows XP, if you guys are old enough to know what those systems are like. That's the genre of programming that we're using. I want a brand new system, a brand new software system to manage our skies. I need the Congress to give us that, the rest of the money. I need those resources. And by the way, the new software, it's going to take us a while to have it developed, and then it has to be debugged, and then it has to be deployed. So this is the longest time frame of the issues that I have to deal with, which is why the longer I wait, the longer it takes. And so I do hope, and by the way, this is bipartisan. We're talking about partisan shutdowns right now. Democrats and Republicans agree with this, and I'm hopeful that they will move quickly as we come in after the shutdown, whether at the end of this year or the start of next year, to get us those resources. In regard to compromise, what Republicans have said is keep the current levels. Let's not change it. It's truly a continuing resolution. Just keep the government open and funded, and we have time to continue the conversations. But to be held hostage for health care for illegals, I don't think makes sense. Again, I don't think that's a compromise that Republicans are willing to make. President Trump has talked about America First. And America First means let's work on housing and health care and food and air traffic and air travel for American citizens. But But to stand up and say we're going to fund something for those who are not here lawfully, I think is a problem for Republicans and the president. Yes?
President Trump has threatened layoffs at federal agencies if the shutdown continues. Will the FAA or U.S. Department of Transportation see any layoffs?
So we've had layoffs across the Department of Transportation, which FAA is part of. But in regard to critical staffing positions, like air traffic controllers, they have not been laid off, right? But the Civil Rights Division that reviews issues with the big projects in New York, they have been laid off. So again, if it's critical infrastructure, critical jobs that maintain safety, whether it's on our roads, our rail, our bridges, our airports, those folks come to work. But they come to work without a guarantee that they're going to get paid, which is why they're so concerned as they're in these towers, controlling this airspace, thinking about what's going to happen in their own homes. Again, they're not wealthy. They don't have 3 or 4 or 5 months of cash sitting in their bank accounts. Like many of us, they go from one paycheck to the next, and they rely on that to pay the bills. And as of right now, that paycheck's not going to come, and that concerns them. Yes. So just to be clear, I don't have TSA under my control, so all the complaints on TSA don't come to me. But in regard to controllers, yeah, there's controllers that have called out sick, but by the way, so we're tracking it, and I don't have a continual problem in one area, right? There's been, one facility one day, another facility another day. In some areas there's been a 50% reduction in some of the staffing, and again, we're tracking it, and we take the appropriate action necessary to make sure our skies are safe. And again, we have great managers that are here. If we see there's issues in the tower that are affecting controllers' ability to effectively control the airspace, we'll reduce the rate, and you'll see more delays, or you might see a cancellation. I'm willing to do that before we're willing to risk anyone's life in the air. By the way, we're here in Newark. Just at the end of April, early May, we had 2 outages that were very concerning. You saw the rate get reduced dramatically. We worked with Verizon and our other partners, and we put in redundant fiber lines as opposed to the old copper, and that has been functioning very well. The last stats I have for several months, Newark was the most on-time airport in the whole system. So things are going better here, and we're moving at a way different speed than what they moved in past administrations. Again, trying to address the problems as quickly as possible. We saw an outage at DFW a couple weeks ago. We had redundant lines in DFW, but they had a single point of failure in that system, which means you don't have redundancy. And that single point of failure failed, and you saw some mass outages that rippled through the system. Again, those are the issues that we're looking at, which is why part of the $12.5 billion is to rebuild the telecom infrastructure and make sure you don't have another Newark, you don't have another DFW. You take care of it, you do it right, you do it fast, and you make it worthy of 2025, not worthy of 1998. One more question.
Can you say where
if I may, sir, just to put things in perspective, thinking about the worst case scenario, I know your concern is great, but there was a 35-day shutdown about 7 years ago. What happened? What happened to our traffic controlling? People fall sick. How did it affect delays, whatnot? Tell us.
So again, shutdowns have an impact. They do have an impact. I think what's different here is why are we shutting the government down? Right? Are Republicans trying to put more things in the continuing resolution? No, they're trying to extend the funding of the government so negotiations can happen. Don't change a thing. Just continue the current funding levels, which, by the way, a lot of conservatives don't like. Right? They might want to make changes themselves, but they said no. Just continue current funding. It's the Democrats who are trying to put in these ideological ideas of funding people who came here illegally and to fund their health care. And again, maybe older people don't care so much. You talk to younger people and talk about housing, affordability, health care, their ability to get a good job. The competition for housing, for health care, for jobs that happen when you bring illegals into the country is real for many Americans. And so, again, in this administration, we're going to put the American people first, the American people's priorities first, ahead of those who've come into the country unlawfully. And that's what President Trump and Republicans in the House and the Senate have said they're going to do. And it begs the question, why would Chuck Schumer want to change the funding stream for illegals and to get that be willing to shut down our government? It doesn't make any sense. Again, illegals don't vote for Chuck Schumer. They don't. But citizens of New York do, and there's real impacts in New York and in New Jersey where we're at right now. And so I don't know what the strategy is. Again, continue the current levels of funding. Have a conversation. But don't try to take the American people hostage with a shutdown and make sure that controllers don't have their paychecks, because that makes you feel better because you're fighting for illegals. Well, no. These controllers say, well, fight for us. Fight for my paycheck. I work hard for you, Chuck. Maybe you should work hard for me. And again, take weeks, take a couple months, and have the conversation with Republicans, but don't hold Americans hostage because you want to fund illegals' health care. That makes no sense. Again, by the way, no offense, Nick, but controllers a pretty wide array of political opinions. Again, probably lean a little more Democrat than Republican, but they want to be paid. They want to be paid for their work. Just like, you want to be paid for your work. They too want to get paid for their work. They don't have to think about where that paycheck's going to come from. But Chuck Schumer said, I want you to think about whether you can pay your mortgage or pay your car payment or put food on your kid's table, because I care more about illegals than I do about you. I think that's unacceptable. And again, I think it's my job to let you know what issues we're having because of the shutdown, what impact it could have on you, on your travel, on your projects. It's not cost-free. This does have an impact on the American people. And I think Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries should recognize that. And again, Republicans have both chambers, but Democrats have the votes that are necessary to open up the government. It's not a 50-vote majority in the Senate. It's a 60-vote majority in the Senate. And Democrats are using their votes to say, we want to keep this government shut down. And by the way, the vote to open up the government in the Senate was bipartisan. Democrats joined Republicans to say, yes, let's open this up. It was all Democrats that said, no, keep it closed. With that, we're going to keep you posted and updated as we deal with the continuing rollout and consequence of the shutdown. Like what happened today with controllers, we'll continue to keep you updated and apprised. But thank you for coming out today. We appreciate it.
Can you say which facility had 50%?
That's it. Thanks, guys.
All right, so you're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturtevant. That is Secretary Sean Duffy, Transportation Secretary, leaving the podium. He's leaving the airport right now, Newark, the airport in Newark, talking about the impacts of the government shutdown. We're in day 6 of the government shutdown. As he wraps up, Caroline Leavitt has just got to the podium for the White House briefing. So we want to take you there now. Let's take a listen in.
Happy Monday. Let's get to it, and we'll begin with a few scheduling announcements today. President Trump will be hosting the Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney tomorrow for a working meeting here at the White House. On Thursday, the president will host his 8th cabinet meeting alongside his incredible team. Also on Thursday afternoon, President Trump will host the president of Finland, Alexander Stubb, for a working meeting here at the White House. Also wanted me to relay his congratulations to Japan for electing their next prime minister, a highly respected person who also happens to be the first female to hold the position for our great ally. While President Trump continues to negotiate peace deals, meets with world leaders, and celebrates the 250th birthday of our United States Navy, as you saw he and the First Lady do just yesterday, Democrats, unfortunately, are continuing to play political games. And we are now in day 6 of the Democrat federal government shutdown. Millions of American federal workers are under enormous financial stress as a result, wondering how they will pay their bills and take care of their families. If the Democrats do not vote to open the government tonight, federal workers will not receive their next full paycheck. Additionally, the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for women, infants, and children will run out of federal money very soon. This program provides vouchers to buy infant formula, fresh fruits and vegetables, and other healthy foods for low-income families. It can be easily fully funded if Democrats simply vote tonight to reopen the government. Also, our incredible military service members who risk their lives to preserve and defend our country are now working without pay and will miss their next paychecks if this Democrat shutdown does not end tonight. The Republican-backed clean and nonpartisan funding bill fully funds this important food aid program, gets our troops paid, and reopens the government. So all of this begs the question, what is the Democrat ongoing shutdown truly about? The sad truth, we believe, is that the Democrats intentionally shut down the government and are inflicting this pain on American citizens to try and demand free health care for illegal aliens. Of course, this is an indefensible and truly radical policy to be in favor of, let alone to use as the primary reason to shut down the United States government. So the Democrats and their allies are desperately lying about their true motivations. We have to set the record straight with the facts so the American people understand what's really at play here. House Republicans passed a clean and nonpartisan funding bill to keep the government open and ensure our troops and other hardworking Americans are paid. Every single House Democrat except one voted against this clean and nonpartisan funding bill. Senate Republicans have subsequently tried to pass this same clean funding bill 4 separate times, and they will do so again tonight, to fully pass it to be sent to the president's desk for signature. And the president is ready to sign this bill to reopen the government as soon as it is sent to his desk. Yet every single Senate Democrat except 3 have voted against this clean and nonpartisan funding bill. The Democrats' current position is that the only way the American government can reopen is if illegal aliens can get free health care. Don't take my word for it, just look at what's inside of the Democrats' proposal to reopen the government. Their funding proposal would result in nearly $200 billion spent on health care for illegal aliens and other non-citizens over the next decade. To put this in perspective, $200 billion is enough money to fund the entire Children's Health Insurance Program, which provides health insurance to low-income children and women. Under the Democrats' proposal, the millions of illegal aliens who improperly were granted asylum and paroled under the Biden administration would once again be allowed to receive Medicaid benefits. It does not end there. The Democrat proposal would also require Medicaid to pay more for emergency care provided to illegal aliens than it does for American patients who are disabled, elderly, or children. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. The Democrat Party has unfortunately closed our government, costing Americans their jobs, threatening our military readiness, harming our economy, and causing chaos, all to help the illegals who broke into our country. Instead of holding illegal aliens accountable and removing them from our country, which is what this administration is trying to do every day, the Democrats want to give them the free benefits paid for by the American taxpayer. Democrats in 2025 are for illegal aliens first and Americans last. This is the reality we are unfortunately facing right now in Washington, D.C. President Trump and Republicans will not give in to these radical demands. The president and Republicans have a sacred responsibility to serve and protect the interests of their constituents, the American people. That's why we are backing a clean and nonpartisan funding bill with no strings attached to reopen the government. Democrats should do what they did 13 separate times under Joe Biden and vote for this exact same type of funding bill. Now the Senate will vote tonight for the 5th time to reopen the government on the 6th day of this shutdown. All we need are an additional 5 Democrat senators to end this madness and vote for the clean funding bill to reopen the government. If you are an American watching at home right now, call your Democrat senators and tell them to do the right thing and end this shutdown. With that, I will take your questions. Here in our new media seat today, we have Elizabeth Mitchell from the Daily Signal. Elizabeth, thanks for being here, and please kick us off.
Thank you for having me. I have two questions. First, President Trump told reporters yesterday that firings of federal employees are taking place right now. In which departments have people already been fired from their federal jobs due to the shutdown?
The president was referring to the hundreds of thousands of federal workers who have been furloughed as a result of this federal government shutdown, both here at the White House and across the entire federal government. At agencies across the board, there are federal workers who are staying home. Many of them work in the White House. You know them. Some of them sit just behind me at those desks. They are unable to show up to work right now because the Democrats chose to shut the government down. And so we're already, unfortunately, seeing the consequence of this. And then, of course, the Office of Management and Budget is continuing to work with agencies on who, unfortunately, is going to have to be laid off if this shutdown continues.
And Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said the FDA was required by federal law to approve the new abortion pill last week. Is the administration considering steps to undo this in light of requests from pro-life Congress members and organizations?
I think Secretary Kennedy and the Department of Health and Human Services, as I addressed in the briefing last week, were following the law, and we will continue to do so. As I said last week as well, it's not an endorsement of this drug by any means. It's just a law that they were following. Jennifer.
We heard you say that you want people to call their Democratic senators. Is the president calling Democratic senators himself? Can you say what he's doing today to resolve the shutdown?
Yep, I was just in the Oval Office. He was on the phone with Speaker Johnson. He's also spoken with the Senate Majority Leader, who are in touch with, of course, moderate Democrats and Democrats across the board, who we understand hopefully want to do the right thing by their constituents to reopen the government. So the president is being kept very well apprised of the ongoing shutdown on Capitol Hill. And of course, his position is very clear. There's nothing to negotiate, just reopen the government, and then we can talk about all the important issues facing our country.
So he hasn't called specific members of Congress?
Not to my knowledge, no.
And then on the Affordable Care Act, is he willing to give more, to share more on what he'd like to negotiate on the Affordable Care Act later? Is he willing to say specifically what he would like and when?
But look, the president is definitely committed to fixing and improving our healthcare system. You saw it again last week when he had one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world coming into the Oval Office and promising to lower drug prices by 200, 300, 100% in many cases for various types of drugs for American patients. That is a huge fix to a broken system that has been ripping off the American people for far too long. So the president's very committed to this. But right now, we need to reopen the federal government, and the president is remaining very firm in that position. Catherine.
If the vote fails in the Senate today to reopen the government, would that trigger layoffs?
Look, again, we hope that the vote will not fail because this administration wants to reopen the government. We don't want to see people laid off. But unfortunately, if this shutdown continues, layoffs are going to be an unfortunate consequence of that.
Is there a timing for when that would happen?
Well, look, we'll see how the vote goes tonight.
And can you confirm, is the White House floating a proposal to cap Obamacare subsidies by denying them to new enrollees?
I have not seen a proposal like that. Emily.
Thanks, Caroline. The president said yesterday he was considering a phase 2 approach to Venezuela. Is the president considering U.S. boots on the ground or any kind of support of overthrowing Maduro?
I won't get into any specific proposals that are being considered by the president and his national security team, but I think we've been pretty transparent and clear in the administration's view of the illegitimate Maduro regime, and the president has taken very unprecedented, tough action to end the illegal trafficking of illicit drugs into our country from Maduro's illegitimate regime. Danny, go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. The French government has collapsed again for the fourth time in a year. And I was just wondering if there's any concern in the White House about the kind of ongoing political crisis there, and any thought about whether the President Trump's good friend, President Macron, should either call elections or even resign over that.
Well, I can tell you the White House and the National Security Council are very much aware of this situation, but I think it would be imprudent of me to weigh in on French internal politics from the podium, so I will reserve comment on that. Behind you, yes.
What is President Trump's expectations for talks today and I guess this week in Egypt? And is there a new timeline that the president is giving all sides to reach an agreement?
Yes, there are technical talks happening right now in Egypt amongst Special Envoy Witkoff and Mr. Kushner, as well as their respective parties from all sides. What we saw take place on Friday, and I have not commented on that from the podium yet, is truly remarkable. You've seen all sides of this conflict agree that this war needs to end and agree to the 20-point framework that President Trump proposed. It's an incredible achievement, and the administration is working very hard to move the ball forward as quickly as we can. The president wants to see a ceasefire. He wants to see the hostages released, and the technical teams are discussing that as we speak to ensure that the environment is perfect to release those hostages. They're going over the lists of both the Israeli hostages and also the political prisoners who will be released, and those talks are underway, and the president is very much on the ball and is being apprised of this situation.
The president had given a Sunday evening deadline. Obviously, the negotiations have extended that, I imagine. What is that new deadline? Does the president have a time frame in mind to see this phase implemented?
Well, the Sunday evening deadline was to hear back from Hamas on the proposal one way or another. And of course, on Friday, Hamas put out a very clear statement in the president's view that they accept the president's framework, and that's why those technical talks are now underway. But again, we want to move very quickly on this, and the president wants to see the hostages released as soon as possible. Steve.
How long do you expect those technical talks to last, Caroline?
I don't want to draw a red line up here, Steve. Of course, it's very important, as I just mentioned, that we get this done quickly. That's how the president's team feels, so we can get some momentum, get the hostages out, and then move to the next part of this, which is really ensuring that we can create a lasting and durable peace in Gaza and ensure that Gaza is a place that no longer threatens the security of Israel or the United States.
What do you expect to be on the agenda for the president's meeting with the Prime Minister of Canada tomorrow?
I'm sure trade will be a topic of discussion tomorrow, and all of the other issues that are facing both Canada and the United States. I know the president looks forward to having that discussion with Carney in the Oval Office. Caitlin.
Thanks, Caroline. I have two questions. On the layoff of federal workers, potentially, the president said yesterday that Democrats will be to blame if federal workers lose their jobs. Historically, though, in past shutdowns, workers have been furloughed, but they have not been laid off en masse. So wouldn't that be the president's call to lay people off?
As I've said repeatedly, Caitlin, this conversation about layoffs would not be happening right now if the Democrats did not vote to shut the government down. And as I also said last briefing as well, we are $37 trillion in debt, and the government is not receiving any cash. So someone has to look at the balance sheet and be good stewards of the American taxpayer dollar. And layoffs are an unfortunate consequence of that.
First term, for example.
Well, as I'm telling you now, this administration is focusing on checking the balance sheet and ensuring we're doing the right thing by the American taxpayer. And again, these conversations about layoffs would not be happening in the White House today if not for the Democrat shutdown. And they have a choice to change that. They have another opportunity tonight to do the right thing to reopen the government. Joey.
Judge over the weekend. Sorry, my second question. A federal judge over the weekend that the president had appointed to the bench in his first term in office basically argued that he could not deploy other states' National Guards to Portland. Basically said that it was untethered, his argument, to what is actually happening on the ground. Which local officials in Portland have said that the National Guard is needed there?
With all due respect to that judge, I think her opinion is untethered in reality and in the law. The president is using his authority as Commander-in-Chief, U.S. Code 12406, which clearly states that the president has the right to call up the National Guard in cases where he deems it's appropriate. And if you look at what has happened in Portland, Oregon, for more than 100 nights, I was talking to our law enforcement team about it this morning, for more than 100 days, night after night after night, the ICE facility has been really under siege by these anarchists outside. They have been disrespecting law enforcement. They've been inciting violence. We saw, again, a guillotine rolled out in front of this federal building. And so the president wants to ensure that our federal buildings and our assets are protected. And that's exactly what he's trying to do. And ultimately, in the case in Los Angeles, that judge ruled in the Ninth Circuit, that panel of judges ruled that those troops could remain and that the president was well within his authority to do so. So we are appealing that decision. As you know, we expect a hearing on it pretty quickly, and we're very confident in the president's legal authority to do this, and we're very confident we will win on the merits of the law.
But no local officials that you can point to that have said we need the National Guard? Because I spoke to the police chief of Portland last week. He said that
the president's claims just don't match up with what's happening on the ground.
I would encourage you as a reporter to go on the ground and to take a look at for yourself, because there's been many members of the press, not press in this room, but independent journalists, some of whom we'll be inviting to the White House very soon to share their stories, because they have been in the middle of these riots and they have witnessed the anarchy that is taking place night after night. It's on video. You should play it on your show. You have a great opportunity on prime time on CNN to show your audience. Yeah, but you're probably talking to partisan Democrat officials who are opposed to everything this president does. You should also ask the people who live in Portland. We've actually heard from many members of the community who have said that this is complete civil disobedience. It's a mess. It's been loud. It's been troubling for neighbors in the community who are just trying to live peacefully. And these people are not there to peacefully protest. They are there to cause mayhem and havoc.
Yeah, Caroline.
Stephen, go ahead.
Thank you, Caroline. Two questions. First, do you have a reaction to reports that thousands of Cuban troops are deployed alongside Russia fighting in Ukraine? And on a very different matter, the president last week floated in an interview with our colleague Daniel from One America a rebate for tariffs of up to $2,000 per person. Is that plan contingent on the Supreme Court's upcoming ruling on the legality of the tariffs? And is the White House preparing for legislation to make that happen?
Sure. On the first point, I have not seen that report, Stephen, but I'll check in with our national security team after this and we'll get you an update. To your second point about the tariff rebates, I think it's an idea that the president has discussed and floated with his team of advisors, but no decision has been firmly made at this point in time. Why don't we go to the back? Owen.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
A few days ago, President Trump demanded Jay Jones of Virginia get out of the race for condoning political violence in a text message against a Republican politician a few years ago. He hasn't left the race. He hasn't dropped out. What's the president's reaction?
Well, as you know, I'm not at liberty to discuss political races from the podium. I think the president himself made his position very clear, and I think anyone could agree the messages that were sent by this Democrat nominee for Attorney General in Virginia are really shocking, alarming, and completely unacceptable. He was threatening to kill his opponent and his opponent's children, and that type of rhetoric has zero place in our country, and the president was absolutely right to condemn that.
One more, please.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. The Democrats have questioned and scrutinized the president's comments about using potentially the military, American cities, as training grounds for the military. And when you look at Portland, Chicago, local and state officials say that their local law enforcement is able to handle the situations, these protests on the ground. The president says that Portland is burning, using that as justification for the National Guard in Portland. But when you look here in Washington, D.C., the president just last week said it is now a completely safe city, and there are still National Guard members on the streets that are not involved in ICE activities. Can you provide the justification for the White House here in Washington, D.C., why the National Guard members continue to be out on the streets?
Because Washington, D.C. has invited the National Guard here. Why? Because the mayor is doing the right thing, unlike mayors in other cities like Portland, as Caitlin and others have pointed out, who refuse to see that there are positive results from when local law enforcement works with federal law enforcement to do the right thing on behalf of their citizens. And Washington, D.C. is no doubt a safer city right now today than it was a few months ago when President Trump started this initiative to make D.C. safe again. And the National Guard is still here because the president and the mayor agree that it's a good thing for the city. Just like you're seeing in Memphis, for instance. We'll have National Guard deployed to Memphis. We have federal agents who are on the ground working with state and local law enforcement. The state police in Tennessee are part of this effort. The local metropolitan police in Memphis are part of this effort. State and local law enforcement and federal law enforcement should be working together. And it's a shame that we see in some cities across the country that their mayors are just simply refusing to cooperate because they don't like Donald Trump. And that's what this boils down to. And I don't think any American would disagree that Chicago needs more law enforcement reinforcements, that they need more resources. Look at this headline from over the weekend. At least 30 people shot during the weekend in Democrat-run Chicago. 5 of them were killed in one weekend. This is completely unacceptable, and the president wants to make American cities safer, and he's willing to work with anyone to do it.
If the courts allow you to ultimately send in the National Guard into Chicago and Portland, do Democrats not have reason to be concerned that there are long-term plans by this administration to keep U.S. military or the National Guard in American cities, like what we're seeing here in Washington.
Why should they be concerned about the federal government offering help to make their cities a safer place? They should be concerned about this. They should be concerned about the fact that people in their cities right now are being gunned down every single night, and the president, all he's trying to do is fix it. And there has been a complete smear campaign by the Democrats and the media, quite frankly. I was reading Political Playbook this morning, one of the most inside the Beltway newsletters you can find. And you guys are framing this like the president wants to take over the American cities with the military. The president wants to help these local leaders who have been completely ineffective in securing their own cities. And we have already seen there's a positive formula for that. Look at Washington, D.C. The murder rate has declined significantly. Our streets are safer. People who live here feel safer. All of you in this room, I know you do, you just won't admit it. And it's a proven system that works, and the president wants to make America's cities safe again. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Michael.
Thank you, Caroline. Two questions, if I may.
Because the mayor wants them. Michael.
These talks in Egypt, if Hamas does agree to relinquish power and give it up, cede power to this transitional technocratic government, if that does happen, would the Trump administration then recognize a Palestinian state?
Look, I don't want to get ahead of the technical talks right now, Michael. They're extremely sensitive. They're taking place, again, as we speak, and there's a lot of, there's many things to discuss, of course. This is hopefully we expect and we hope going to be one of the greatest peace deals this world has ever seen. And the Trump administration is working diligently and working very hard to get there. And as I said, Friday, all terms agreed. We have the Arab countries who are working with us. Of course, Israel has been incredible in cooperating with the president's plan and agreeing to it. And we're very hopeful, and we expect that to continue.
Caroline, you tweeted about this over the weekend.
Thank you. I was going to you in the blue shirt and tie.
Thank you,
yes,
Caroline.
You're welcome.
With the Daily Mail. Today, the Supreme Court declined to hear Ghislaine Maxwell's appeal. Will Trump rule out granting her clemency? Is that something the White House is considering?
It's not something I've heard discussed, and we don't comment on clemency requests that may or may not have been made, but I'm certainly not tracking that one at this point in time.
Caroline.
Jordan, go ahead.
Thank you, Caroline. So we're talking about these radical groups in Portland and Chicago. I know the president has spoken about potentially going after George Soros with RICO charges and for funding all of this violence. Has there been any update on that? And also, is the administration looking into the other nonprofits, maybe taking away their 501c3 status for funding this violence? And then I have one more question.
Sure. The financial backing of these groups, particularly Antifa, is certainly something the administration is looking into aggressively. And the federal government has never really been mobilized or tasked with doing that. So we're kind of kickstarting that into gear. The FBI is working on it alongside the White House's Homeland Security Task Force. We have our intelligence community looking into this as well. And even the Secretary of Treasury is involved with these matters since they are financial in nature. And we will continue to get to the bottom of who is funding these organizations in this organized anarchy against our country and our government. It's a question the American people have been begging the answer for many years, and we're committed to uncovering it. And when we do, I'm sure you'll be one of the first people to know.
Separately, Caroline.
Thank you. So Gaza, under the president's plan, is going to be governed by a transitional governance of a technocratic, apolitical Palestinian committee made up of qualified Palestinians and international experts. Now, given how radicalized the Palestinian population is in Gaza and in the West Bank, can you offer some insight or guidance into who are some of these Palestinians that are going to be considered for leadership roles in Gaza, and where are you going to be finding them, and do you have any names?
We're not quite there yet, Jonathan. The president believes peace is possible in Gaza, and that's why he presented this detailed and comprehensive plan. The first step of that is securing a ceasefire and releasing the hostages, and then those conversations about ensuring a durable and lasting peace can continue. But what do you need to have peace in a region like Gaza that's been war-torn for far too long? You need security guarantees, and you need good governance. And so those will be two of the priorities that this administration is focused on.
If I may, the president has said he wants the government to reopen this week in a deal. What's going to happen by the end of the week if there's no deal? What's the White House prepared to do?
With no deal with what?
To reopen the government.
Look, as I said, unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of pain inflicted. There already is on the American public, on our troops who are not being paid, again, on women and young children who depend on critical food assistance. We hate to see this, and in fact, the Office of Management and Budget is trying to do everything they can to find funds to get out the door for these vulnerable populations in our country. Again, we shouldn't be having to do that. The Democrats have a chance to change course tonight. I believe the vote's taking place at 6:30, and we urge Democrat senators to vote to reopen the government and to do the right thing. Thanks, guys.
All right, so you're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sertivant. That was the White House briefing that just wrapped up there with Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt addressing the government shutdown along with other issues, especially and also the potential peace deal in Gaza, as well as some of the topics that she touched on. Let's take a quick break. We're going to step aside for just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Again, we'll be back here in 2 minutes here on Live Impact News. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sertivant. Carlene is here. Jeb is here in studio. So we just heard from the White House. Of course, they Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, addressed the government shutdown. We also heard from a Democrat House Speaker, or House Minority Leader, I should say, Hakeem Jeffries, speaking about the government shutdown. We heard from him today on the Today Show. So we wanted to play back his comment after we just heard from the White House. Let's take a listen in to what Representative Jeffries had to say.
New York Leader Jeffries, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
First week where a lot of folks aren't going to be getting their paychecks. We've got hundreds of thousands of livelihoods hanging in the balance. Democrats could end this, as you know, and you could just actually extend funding levels for 7 weeks. You could kick the can down the road. Why not?
Well, it's very unfortunate that Donald Trump and Republicans have decided to shut the government down because they're unwilling to provide health care to working class Americans. We've said from the very beginning, we'll sit down with anyone, anytime, any place in order to reopen the government, find a bipartisan agreement that actually meets the needs of the American people. We need a spending agreement that improves the quality of life of everyday Americans, that doesn't hurt everyday Americans. And we also need to address this Republican health care crisis that is hurting people all across the country, rural America, working class America, urban America, small-town America, the heartland of America, and black and brown communities all throughout America.
So, Mr. Leader, again, longest shutdown was during the first Trump presidency. This is what you said at the time about that particular shutdown. Here it is.
We are willing to take what Senate Republicans have done in order to reopen the government so that we no longer are holding 800,000 federal workers hostage.
Well, that's exactly what you're doing right now. Hundreds of thousands of workers are being held hostage. What's changed from then to now?
Well, actually, Donald Trump is the president. Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. They can reopen the government if they chose to. The reality is...
Well, they would have to change the rules to be fair.
Well, that's correct. But which they've done multiple times, including using that particular type of process to pass their one big ugly bill, which started this whole Republican health care crisis, largest cut to Medicaid in American history, ripped food out of the mouths of children, and they did it so they could reward their billionaire donors with massive tax breaks. All we're saying is we need a spending agreement that actually meets the needs of the American people, working class Americans, middle class Americans, and everyday Americans, as opposed to what they've done throughout this year, which is to reward their billionaire donors.
But again, the majority of folks certainly don't want their health care premiums to go up. And I think a lot of folks are watching this and they're wondering, why fight this battle now? Why not reopen the government and still have these conversations and negotiate over the next few months?
Yeah, it's a really good question. But the time is now to address this health care crisis.
But why now?
Well, absolutely. The enrollment period opens on November 1st. Notices have already started to go out, indicating that premiums, copays, and deductibles for tens of millions of Americans all across the country are going to dramatically increase. For example, a couple that makes $88,000 a year currently, which receives the Affordable Care Act tax credits, pays insurance of about $8,000 per year. That will triple to $24,000 a year right now. That's what people are facing right now, which is why we need to address it.
President Trump did say yesterday that he wants to, quote, fix the ACA subsidies. Is that an opening?
Well, he also mentioned that in the White House meeting that we had last Monday. Unfortunately, the White House and Republican leaders have gone radio silent ever since then.
So you guys haven't even talked since last Monday?
We have not talked, but they have my number. We're willing to sit down.
But
we want to meet.
You do recognize how ridiculous it sounds that the leader of the Democratic Party,
correct.
the President of the United States, no one's even talking about reopening the government. People won't get paychecks this week.
It makes no sense, which is why we're going to be in Washington all week. Unfortunately, Republicans have actually canceled votes because they want to keep the government shut down.
All right. Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Mr. Leader, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so that was House Minority Leader and Democrat Hakeem Jeffries talking about the government shutdown on the Today Show earlier today, in case you missed it. All right, so we want to change gears right now. So I talked about it earlier. I talked about the Panthers. Panthers went out. I'm not going to go back through that story again, but the Panthers won. Comeback, biggest comeback in quite some time, down 17 points, scored 20 unanswered points. Dolphins came back, scored 24-20. Panthers went right back down the field and won the game 27-24. Big day for the young guys on the team. A big day for the coaching staff because I feel like they matured a lot in this game. Hopefully that carries over into Dallas next week, or I guess it's a home game, but against Dallas, I should say. All right, so we want to get to our friends at Locked On. Julian Council sat down with Miles Harris to break down yesterday's game. Let's take a listen in.
Well, it was easily one of the most impressive wins to date for the Carolina Panthers this season. To join me to talk more about this win, Julian Council with Locked On. Julian, first grab at this win. I mean, how impressive was this one?
I mean, super impressive, Miles, because I was sitting there in that first half when they went down 17-0 thinking, oh, here we go. This is going to be yet another one of the embarrassing losses during this David Tepper era. And instead, it became one of the more emphatic comeback wins, one of the biggest wins the Panthers have had since back in 2018, when up in Philadelphia, Cam Newton brought the Panthers back from 17 points down to win that game. Now, that season did not end into the playoffs, and we'll see how this season potentially turns around after this kind of a win. But I thought it was huge for Dave Canales, for Bryce Young, who got them into that 17-0 hole, and for a defense that's been much maligned, had a nice little turnaround against Arizona, then against Atlanta, then took a big step back last week to take a step forward again this week. Big for the Panthers to come out there, turn things around, and get this win to go to 2-3.
Now, we got to admit, we talked about this a little bit earlier, though, too. It kind of seemed like, at least at first grab, that this was going to go in the wrong direction, right? A couple early turnovers for Bryce Young. What was the turning point that you noticed there that really helped kind of chip away and ultimately win this game for the Carolina?
Yeah, I think, honestly, the turning point was a play made by Bryce Young. You look at it, they got into this position because Bryce had one of the worst fumbles you'll ever see, where it looked like he just got spooked by Bradley Chubb and just dropped the ball. The interception was an overthrow. We've seen that time and time again from Bryce early on in his career here in Carolina. But there was a 4th down play, 4th and 4. They're in Dolphins territory, 47-yard line, basically in no man's land. Got to go for it. He's able to evade the rush and then find Tetairoa McMillan for a 20-yard reception for that first down. Then he finds Xavier Legette, a guy who a lot of people, myself included, have really been down on based on how he performed week 1 in Jacksonville, week 2 in Arizona. And for him to have that play, Bryce to make that play, that's where really things started to turn around. Because if they don't get that 4th down, then I think we're talking about a much different result. And I'll also shout out the defense. 5 straight possessions in the middle of that game where they forced a punt and a scoreless possession for Miami. If the defense didn't hold the Dolphins down, that does not give Bryce Young, Rico Dowdle, and the rest of the offense an opportunity to come back here and to win this game on Sunday.
And what a confidence booster, not just for Bryce, but also for Xavier Legette. Get back in that game, get that touchdown as well. But one guy we got to talk about on offense, Rico Dowdle. I mean, over 200 yards, 206, a career high. How important was he in this game?
He's fantastic. And the situation that he came into here in Carolina was always going to have him playing second fiddle to Chuba Hubbard, even though he was coming off of a career year last year in Dallas, rushing for over 1,000 yards. But he's back home in the Carolinas from Asheville, close to his alma mater in South Carolina. And he had an awesome day, as you mentioned. 206 yards, which is second most by individual player in Panthers history, tied with Jonathan Stewart. DeAngelo Williams has the record, 210 back in 2012. But he was paramount. And the Panthers really have not had the kind of rushing attack I think a lot of people thought they would have with Chuba and with Rico so far this season. And for him to get 9 yards per clip, nearly a first down every time he touched it. And really some of those drives where 53-yarder that he broke off there to get Carolina down from 17-10 to 17-13. Had that 44-yarder that gave them the lead to get down from 20, to go up 20-17, like was huge in this game. So to come in, have the opportunity to step into that role and to almost have a record day as far as franchise-wise on the ground, like he was huge for Carolina offensively.
And big shout out to the offensive line, though, too, because as soon as he got those holes, I mean, he was just gone at this point, making those big gains. Now, we talked about it, obviously, the confidence booster coming out for this game for Bryce Young. We talked about this earlier in the season, a lot of question marks and really uncertainty on really how far he could take this team with a win like this, though. I mean, that's got to change the narrative a little bit.
Yeah, certainly. Like, you got the good and you got the bad from Bryce Young today, and it's really been that Jekyll Hyde type of play that's had a lot of us asking questions of whether he can be the franchise quarterback in Carolina. And there's still 12 more games left this season to see whether he can get that consistency. And going into this game, actually, the Panthers were 1-18 in any game where Bryce Young turned the ball over. So when he turns it over, the Panthers lose. Well, until today and last year against New Orleans. So I give him a lot of credit for the plays that he made there on that drive that made it 17-7, the plays that he made on the final drive of that game where Dowdle got them kickstarted of a 16-yard run, but then had a cramp, had to go off the field. Bryce is able to find Jimmy Horn Jr., who also got an opportunity today for the first time in his career on a 4th down. He was able to find Mitchell Evans for that touchdown. Found Xavier Legette also on that drive. So you got a lot of the bad, the things that you can't have from Bryce, but also you got to see some of the things that make you excited about what he potentially can be here. And the hope is we'll continue to be more of that than what you saw in the first half on Sunday, and also what you've seen against Jacksonville and Arizona in those games as well.
Yeah, and it honestly more impressively to get over those turnovers, get over that hump, get over this piece by piece, just chipping away continuously. 2-0 at home. Next week, a tough one. Can they go 3-0?
Possibly. And honestly, at this rate, they're going to have to go 3-0 because they're not good on the road right now. Dave Canales only 2-9 in his career here in Carolina on the road, albeit it's only been 11 games on the road, only his second year early on to it. But they were not competitive at Jacksonville. They were not competitive against Arizona until garbage time when they nearly came back in that game. And we don't really need to discuss what happened last Sunday in New England. But if they can hold serve at home, get to 3-3, have the Jets, which you got to think that's a game you should win on the road. Then at 4-3, possibly, you're feeling pretty good about that litmus test with the Buffalo Bills coming to town, and then after that going up to Green Bay to face off against the Packers. So a huge win for Carolina and a big opportunity coming up against the Dallas Cowboys next Sunday.
I don't want to throw this P word around, but I'm going to have to do it now. When it comes to the playoffs, I mean, we talked about it. I mean, a very impressive win over Atlanta. Obviously, a come-from-behind win like this, though, too. I mean, if they can get the 4-3, do we feel like they could possibly get into that conversation, whether it's in the hunt? I mean, what's it going to take?
Let's get the 4-3 first for Carolina to really talk about the P word. I love that you bring that up because if they, like Dallas, because here's the thing. You looked at the season going into it, and you felt like these first 7 games are where Carolina really needed to get off to a good start. And not being at home for the first couple of weeks where you had 3 of your first 4 games on the road was not ideal for this team. But Jacksonville felt like a winnable game. Arizona felt like a winnable game. Certainly Atlanta did today against Miami, did New England last week. Dallas coming up, as bad as they've been defensively, and the Jets, like those all felt like games Carolina could win. I didn't think they'd win all of them, obviously, but I thought they had a chance to maybe get off to a decent start before they started playing the upper echelon of the NFC and the NFL as a whole, and the Bills and in the Packers in those back-to-back weeks. So if they can get the 4-3, if they can win 3 in a row, which I don't remember the last time the Panthers won. I guess, yeah, it was the start of the 2021 season when Sam Darnold was here. Now he's in Seattle, and he went from Carolina to San Francisco to Minnesota to Seattle. So it's been a long road since that last happened. Maybe we can have that conversation. But certainly, if they get to a 4-3 start, win 3 in a row, and then somehow beat Buffalo, then yeah, we're going to probably have to have a conversation about the P word halfway through the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And that'd be a nice thing for Panthers fans. Hopefully we'll see more of them in the stands come next week. Julian, I always appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And always good to talk about Panthers, especially after a win.
Absolutely.
Thanks, guys.
All right, so that was Miles Harris chatting it up with Julian Council on Locked On. So Panthers win. We have a big game coming up in Dallas. I'm just going to enjoy this win. Look, Dallas offense looks incredible. Defense, not so much. But this Panthers, look, I saw a tweet or a post on X, I should say, and it resonated. The fan said, I'm back delusional again. I feel like I'm not there. I'm more of a realist when it comes to being a fan, a Panthers fan. But I am back hopeful again. But I'm just going to play Sweet Caroline and be at peace with this win. I'm not trying not to get too high and get too low with this team. You just never know.
That's good.
Yeah.
Temper your expectations.
I'm tempering the expectations. All right, so we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. All right, welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sertivant. Carlene is here. Jeb is here. Beautiful day. A little cloudy, but overall beautiful day. Not bad for a Monday. Look at that. Well,
it's not the cutest.
It's not
the cutest picture.
It's not about what it looks like outside. It's about how you feel when you go outside. So it feels just fine outside. Let's check in with a full forecast with meteorologist Becca Birdsall.
The high temperatures over this next week will really tell the story. It will be a warm and muggy start as we go into your Monday and Tuesday. High temperatures close to about 5 degrees above the average high for this time of year. Wednesday brings the chance for rain, thunderstorms, and clouds, which is why we'll drop down into the upper 70s. Behind that cold front will be a big push of dry and cooler air down into the 60s for the high temperature by the time we get into Thursday. Our average high for this time of year is 77, morning low of 55. So today and tomorrow will be above that. Next 48 hours, we do have this surface high pressure system that's working to bring in some tropical moisture, which is why today will be cloudy, will be muggy with those high temperatures in the lower 80s. Then we'll be watching for our next cold front to push across the eastern half of the United States. Ahead of it, this is going to bring in some scattered showers and some thunderstorms, especially going into your Wednesday. In the meantime, spotty showers is what we have on the forecast between Monday and Tuesday. Rainfall likely on Wednesday. And as that cold front continues to sink down to the south, it could potentially have a low pressure system develop on it, which is why Saturday driving in some isolated rain chances, at least for now. Satellite and radar, we do have cloud cover across the area. It is dry though. There will remain an isolated chance for a shower at any point during the daytime hours. Just not going to be impressive. We'll have the same chance to do it as we go into your Tuesday as well. Fast forward into Wednesday. This is 8 a.m. Got a couple of light showers across the greater Charlotte area, but here comes the heavy downpours over towards the mountains, Ashwaubenon and Avery counties, becoming a little bit more scattered between about noon through about 3 o'clock across the greater Charlotte area going into the afternoon. Look at those darker reds. That's indicating some heavy downpours, potentially some stronger storms with this system. We'll carry those rain chances all the way through about Wednesday night before drying off by early Thursday. Adding all the rainfall totals up, it's going to be highly dependent on where that heavy band of rain sets up. Could drop anywhere from 1 to 2 inches. For the rest of us, about a quarter to up to a half an inch between now all the way through about Wednesday night. Big push of colder air will be coming by the time we wake up to Friday morning. Upper 40s, then we'll gradually warm up with those morning temperatures into the lower to middle 50s. Our coolest low temperature so far this fall has been 52 degrees. Actually occurred last Friday. We'll have a chance to challenge that going into your Friday. Live view from our WCNC tower cam. Those are the clouds I was talking about. Temperatures warming up into the lower to middle 70s out there with dew points in the 60s. So just a little bit of a muggy air. Harvest supermoon is tonight. This full moon typically occurs in September, but actually is in proximity to the autumnal equinox, which is why this year is on October. Historically, farmers use the light from the moon to help them gather crops. Peak illumination will be at 11:47 tonight, so just before midnight, and it will be appearing a little bit bigger and brighter. So look towards the eastern horizon just after sunset to get the best viewing. We'll have a chance to do it again tomorrow night as well. Jerry Hunt Supercenter 7-day forecast. Again today, above average. Monday and Tuesday, mostly dry as well. Wednesday, rain is likely with a couple of thunderstorms as well. Drier and much cooler air arrives by Thursday.
All right, so that was Becca Birdsall with a full look at your forecast. A little cloudy, but not bad. Again, it's not what it looks like all the time. It's about how it makes you feel when you're outside. I'm really selling this weather, but okay, all right. Let's change gears now. So we're following this story out of Rock Hill, South Carolina. So the Rock Hill School District is working to strengthen school safety through a proactive FEMA training that will help staff know what to do in case of disasters. All right, so Bria Smith is covering this. So Bria, you went to it. This is a live training. It's in Rock Hill. You talked to school leaders and actually you talked to the superintendent as well in Rock Hill. What did they sort of tell you about this training? Why is it so important?
Yeah, actually, it's currently going on. So it's a 7-hour-long training. It started at 9 this morning. So I'm just outside the Rock Hill Schools building here. But they say it's important because in any kind of disaster, whether it's a natural disaster or, a disaster of violence, as we've seen across our country, unfortunately, being proactive and knowing how to respond, especially in those moments of, despair, is really important. And just giving students, staff, faculty, and parents that sort of confidence in the school system that their safety is their top priority is that big takeaway. So NIMS, or the National Incident Management System, was kind of put into place after 9/11, actually. So after that tragic incident, of course, and it was a after action review response. So kind of what they can do to kind of prevent or be ready for an incident of any kind, again, like natural disaster, storms, hurricanes, or an act of violence.
So you were there. So what did the training? What does the training look like? Is it just classroom work? Is it hands-on? Kind of take me through what that looks like.
Yeah, it was definitely classroom-like. I felt like I was back in college. But there was a presentation. It had a lot of slides, a lot of information. And because, faculty, staff, teachers will be there for so long, there were some snacks there. I had my eye on those for sure. But it was just very interactive. Teachers, staff, had the chance to take notes, ask questions. It was very comfortable. And that was something that the York County EMS director wanted people to make sure of, is that I know it's a slide, there's a lot of information, but they wanted them to feel very comfortable. And so it was a great overall training. From what I saw in my brief moment in there, it's still going on, like I said, but teachers will walk away FEMA certified. They'll also get continued education credits as well. And Rock Hill Schools is the only school district that the York County EMS has held an in-person training with so far. So pretty exciting for Rock Hill Schools.
All right, that's Bria Smith with the eye on snacks and his training there at Rock Hill. You can catch her at 4 and 6. Bria, thank you for your time.
Absolutely, thank you.
All right, again, you can catch Bria's story at 4 and 6 o'clock this evening. All right, so we want to get to something live. Happening right now in Chicago, Illinois. We are hearing from Chicago Police. This is Superintendent Larry Snelling, Actually, we're expected to hear from Superintendent Larry Snelling to address regarding a weekend incident or recent weekend events, I should say, there in Chicago. Let's take a listen in to what Chicago Police are saying.
And to enforce the law the way that it's supposed to be enforced, impartial. We want to make sure that when we show up, we're keeping every single person in this city safe, and we want to keep the peace. That's our jobs. And that's what our men and women out there every single day are doing, putting their lives on the line to keep this city safe. So I just want to be clear about a few things. The events that occurred on Saturday, when there was a shooting involving ICE agents. So I'm going to start with a timeline. It started out with our 2 deputy chiefs who responded to the scene. That would be Deputy Chief Brian Kinane and Deputy Chief Gabriella Shemash. They did an excellent job over there. The narrative is out there that CPD was not on scene. CPD did not show up. Let me just put all of that to rest. At 10:32 a.m., CPD receives a call of a person shot at 39th and Kedzie. By 10:36 a.m., CPD responds. They located a woman who flagged him down. She had been shot. She stated that she had been shot by federal agents. CFD was called. She was taken to the hospital to have her gunshot wounds treated. At 11:06, CPD officers are at the hospital with this individual who had been shot. At 11:25 a.m., CPD units are holding down the scene where the offending vehicle was located. And when I say the offending vehicle, we're talking about the vehicle that smashed into the Border Patrol vehicle. At 11:36, a.m. The scene is then turned over to federal authorities for their investigation after CPD was clear that there was a shooting that involved this particular person who was at the hospital. At 12:12 p.m., in a separate incident, and I believe people have been conflating these two things. In a separate incident from the shooting, there was a vehicle that rammed the federal agents off the road, rammed them off the road at 3200 West 35th Street. They crashed as a result of it. That offending vehicle also struck another vehicle in that location, another federal vehicle in that location, and then fled the scene. Our officers arrived on the scene to do the reports and document everything that happened. We have no documented injuries from that incident. At 12:28 p.m., federal agents called for CPD to assist due to a large crowd gathering at 39th and Kedzie. At 1:09 p.m., additional CPD units are en route to 39th and Kedzie. At 1:15, at 39th and Kedzie, where CPD is on scene, a group of protesters began moving barricades and federal agents deployed tear gas. At 2:56 p.m., objects are being thrown at CPD by members of the public. Federal agents again deployed gas to leave the area. So let me just kind of break down what happened there. Because at 3:48, everything was all clear. When our officers arrived on scene, they met with the federal agents who were out there. The federal agents had deployed chemical agents. They deployed chemical agents while our officers were there. Those who will tell you that our officers weren't there, say that to the 27 officers who were affected by the chemical agents that were deployed by federal agents. There were 27 reports done to document our officers who were affected by that gas. I've since had a conversation with federal agents, and on that particular day, I spoke with the leadership of the federal agency. We talked about things as to how we were going to work this out. You see, communication is the key here. Communication does not mean collaboration. This had nothing to do with immigration enforcement. What it had to do with a scene where someone in our city was shot, and we, as CPD, are responsible for showing up, documenting that, even when the shooting and the investigation has been taken over by the FBI. We stayed out there for the crime scene to make sure that evidence was preserved, because if that evidence isn't preserved, a proper and a well-performed investigation cannot be done if we don't preserve the crime scene. If we allow people to breach that area and contaminate the crime scene, it hurts the investigation. We have a duty to do so. So I need to be clear about a few things. When a crime is being committed, CPD is going to show up. And it doesn't matter if there are ICE agents there, we have a duty to investigate and protect our city. Now, there are a lot of talking heads out there. There are a lot of politics being used here. And people are using this for their political talking points. Well, my officers are not political pawns. My leadership team, not political pawns. Their lives are too important to play politics with these men and women who face danger every single day. This is not a game. This is not a joke. This is still our city. And we still have a responsibility to maintain safety and calm in our city. Now, there are a couple of things that I want to address. One, what we have to deal with as a department. Because I want to be clear to those who have never done the job, who haven't done the job in years, who weren't on scene, who don't know the facts or have the facts. But they've got a lot of solutions or a lot of ideas of what happened or what should have happened. Let me first talk about the Trust Act. The Trust Act prohibits law enforcement in the state of Illinois from engaging in assisting federal agents when it comes to immigration enforcement. We abide by that law. The city ordinance, the Welcoming City Ordinance, goes a little further. It even prohibits us from asking someone their status. We abide by that ordinance. Because in law enforcement, we don't make the laws, we uphold them. And we're sworn to do so. And we take our oath seriously. Engaging with federal agents, we do it on a regular basis. We have task force officers who are out there every single day working to stop human trafficking, drug enforcement, gun violence, gun recoveries, search warrants, and everything in between when it comes to violent crime in our city. We have a great partnership with our federal agents, and we still do, and we will continue to work with them around violent crime. But let me explain how important it is to understand how difficult it is for our officers at times. Because when we look at the Trust Act and the Welcoming City Ordinance, sometimes there's a struggle when you're walking that line to make sure that you're not violating either one of those things, and at the same time enforcing the law the way that we're supposed to. One thing about law enforcement, I'll tell you this right now, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. But we accept that. So I'm not going to stand here and make excuses or pretend like the job is not a struggle, so we're going to make excuses about it. No, we're not going to do that. Again, these men and women go out there every single day, and these are the things that they fight through. And my leadership team wants to make sure that our officers don't get caught up in something where they end up in an investigation, fairly or unfairly, and they want to make sure that these officers are safe and that they can keep everyone else safe. So although we do not engage in immigration enforcement, we are going to enforce the law when the laws are violated. So let me be clear to the public about certain things. Excuse me, I'm a little dehydrated. Let me make this clear. Federal agents, ICE, HSI, are officers. They are agents of law enforcement. If you box them in with vehicles, it is reasonable for them to believe that they are being ambushed and that this could end in a deadly situation. And it's reasonable for them to use force based on those conditions. Do not box in any law enforcement officer. You are breaking the law when you do that. And you are putting yourself in danger. Following law enforcement agents around. The question is why? What do you plan on doing? It's also reasonable for them to believe that you're eventually going to do harm to them. If you ram any vehicle, especially that one that contains law enforcement agents, and that's any law enforcement, local, state, federal, county, and you do this intentionally, this is considered deadly force. Deadly force is anything that can cause great bodily harm or death. When you plow into a vehicle that contains law enforcement agents, you're using deadly force. And they can use deadly force in response to stop you. We need to be clear about these laws. We cannot become a society where we just decide to take everything in our own hands and start to commit crimes against law enforcement. It is a crime. You may not like what they're doing. I can understand that there's a lot of emotions out there, but that does not mean that you get to commit a crime, especially one that could lead to deadly force. We need to keep everyone safe. Our responsibilities when it comes to federal agents, and I've been asked these questions, we do not interfere with the duties and responsibilities of federal agents. We don't have to agree with it. It doesn't matter. You don't have to agree with it. We do not interfere with their orders. And when they go out to carry out their orders, they will do that the way that they're trained to do it and their understanding of what it is they have to do. Another one. CPD will not arrest and cannot arrest federal agents because someone deems what they're doing is illegal or unlawful. Their rules of engagement are different from CPD and other local law enforcement agents. We need to be clear about this. If we're not clear about this, we will see another event like we saw Saturday. We cannot move like this in this city. If we want to keep the peace in this city, we need to be smart about how we do things. And attacking law enforcement under any circumstances is not safe for anyone. Because as I've said before, a member of law enforcement who cannot protect himself or herself cannot protect anyone else. And we have a responsibility to make sure that we protect ourselves and each other so that we can protect everyone else in this city. If for any reason a crime is being committed, an ICE agent, state, local, police officers, if it involves law enforcement, we are going to show up. And whatever's going on there, we're going to work to stop it, put an end to it, calm the situation down. And if we need to stay there to continue to keep the situation calm, we will do exactly that. So I want to be clear about one of the things that we're going to do now. What we're going to do, and this is my decision because I need to be firm on this. When we show up to a scene and a crowd gathers, CPD is going to step out there. We're going to make sure that we maintain that scene and we keep people calm. This is our city, and we're going to make sure that we bring some type of calm or resolution to whatever's going on at that scene. We will be there. Now, when we look at what has happened, there's some things that we can work on. Because whenever you see something for the first time and you respond to it, there's always something that you can do better. That's what we do. And that's why we're having an after action about what happened so that we can prepare if something like this happens again, or to prepare to make sure that we can avoid it. So we learned some things. Now, I'm going to allow some questions from everyone here. I'll do my best to answer your questions to the best of my ability. Again, I would like for everyone to stay on topic as to what we're talking about here right now. And when it's over, there's some things that I'm probably going to touch on if we don't get to them with the questions. So go ahead.
Okay, we'll start here. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Madison with Black Club Chicago. Superintendent, when you said there were 27 agents affected by the chemical agents used, can you expand on that? What do you mean by these officers were affected?
Well, thanks for that question, Madison. Our officers were out there. There were chemical agents dropped. Our officers were pulled from other locations to go over there. On Saturday, we had multiple events going on, including a large protest in the downtown area. So in order to help out at this location, we pulled officers from other places. They did not have the equipment to fight off a chemical agent, and they were affected by it. Were there any major injuries? No. Our officers are resilient and tough, and they were actually pretty tough on the scene. And but we made sure that it was documented, just in case they had some after effects from it. We just want to make sure that our officers are safe. So those officers are doing good, and thank you for the question.
Thank you for expanding.
Sarah Schulte with ABC7. Good afternoon, Superintendent. At any time, maybe you can clear this up too, at any time on Saturday were CPD officers told by dispatchers to stand down?
Well, I don't know about them being told by dispatchers. There was some communication between boots on the ground, a supervisor, and the chief of patrol. So there was some communication by phone. There was something that was put out there that there was an internal message that came from the chief of patrol. That is absolutely not true. There is no internal message. There was a phone conversation. I'm not sure until we get to our after action all of the exact language that was there, but I have had a conversation with the chief of patrol who was concerned about officers showing up on the scene. The chief of patrol at that time had no information that anyone was in danger. And let me just be clear about one other thing when it comes to these federal agents. These federal agents can handle themselves, all right? We've been out there and we've seen it. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to leave them because we know that they can handle themselves. We need to make sure that we have our officers and enough of them to respond to a scene if they are being surrounded. So were they told to stand down? Our officers were not told to stand down. Our officers were out there throughout the entire event. I would never tell our officers to stand down, because if our officers were in trouble and we needed help from other officers, I would expect those officers to step in and help us. And it's the same thing that we do on our side. When someone is in trouble, we're going to step in. So to get a little more information about that, we'll know by tomorrow what that exact conversation was.
Superintendent, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. JC Nada at the NBC Chicago. Going off the point here, damned if you do, damned if you don't, as you mentioned. How do you toe that line between showing up and providing backup for a fellow officer who may be in need, but not helping them and execute their orders that are, of course, from a federal level? How do you toe that line between both of those?
You know, doing the right thing, showing up on the scene, doing the right thing, preparing for the backlash, the rumors, the things that people write and say, the things that people accuse you of. Officers deal with this on a regular basis. And this is why wellness for officers is so important, because this is the type of thing that an officer has to go home and kind of decompress from, right? You show up to a job, you know you're there to make sure that people are safe. And if there are immigration officers there, they're now being accused of enforcing immigration. They now become the subject of an investigation. They don't know how that investigation is going to unfold. But on my end, it's my responsibility to explain these situations. It's my responsibility to take that off of the backs of my officers, that when they go there and do the right thing, that they can be certain that their superintendent is going to stand up for them for doing what they're supposed to do and doing the job the right way, and that's exactly what I'm going to do.
Hi, Superintendent. Sarah Markey, CBS.
Hi, sir.
This is, I guess, part clarification, part question. I think you mentioned you met the day before on how we're going to work this out. Was that a meeting on Friday with federal partners?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure if you understood what I was saying.
Yeah, I don't think I did, so I just wanted to clarify. Have you met, I think you mentioned you met the day before to talk about how we were going to work this out?
No. So I actually have contact with federal agents. And the reason that I talk to them is because when we have a situation that's volatile, that could blow up, that could turn into a full-blown riot, we have to have this communication. Because if we're going to keep the peace and we're going to keep this city as safe as we can possibly keep it, we need to have that communication. The rules of engagement for federal agents and the rules of engagement for CPD are completely different. There are things that these agents do that we don't do here in the city. So we need to make sure that we have an understanding of how we're going to go about keeping the peace at a scene when a crime has been committed. How we're going to stop violence if that's going to happen. And I had what was a very fruitful conversation that stopped Saturday from ending in a riot-like situation. And we're going to continue to do that.
Can you elaborate on what those strategies were then that prevented maybe things?
Well, I won't go into too much with that, but what I will say is this. Having a conversation about our officers going in, taking over the front line, making sure that we're standing out in front of these protesters so that they can then move to the inner perimeter and do what they needed to do to maintain that crime scene. Get that crime scene taken care of as soon as possible, get them out of there as soon as possible. That brings down the boiling point. So if we're working to make sure that we're keeping the peace, this has nothing to do with immigration. It has to do with keeping the peace in our city and keeping calm.
Hi, Superintendent Sophie with the Sun-Times.
Hi,
I don't know if you could talk a little bit more about, we're going to be involved in scenes like this now. Will it look different from how it looked Saturday? Did this federal leadership you spoke with have anything to say about those 27 agents who were, affected by chemical gas?
Oh, absolutely. He was extremely concerned about it. We are going to have further conversations about it. He was also appreciative of the fact that we came in, stepped in, and he was the first to say that this could have turned into a full-blown riot, and it didn't. So CPD, again, just can never say enough about how proud I am of those officers going in, being converged on like that, stepping in, and making sure that they kept the peace there.
Brandon with WVBM News Radio. I think during the DNC, you kind of showed and ushered in what looked like a new era of crowd control and how that might look like successful crowd control. Are you going to be utilizing any of those techniques that were learned and trained for during the DNC? And the second part of this is when you're doing crowd control around these federal agents. Will federal agents then be allowed to join in, and would the techniques that, like we see in Broadview that are being used, or other gas being dispersed throughout the city, are those going to be included into your crowd control techniques?
No, because that and let me just go back to your first question, and it's a great one, and thank you for that. Our officers are trained, and we continue that training just in case we have other civil unrest or protests that are going on, First Amendment activity. And our officers are very well trained, as you said. They'll show up on the scene and they'll utilize that training.
All right, so you're watching a press conference there live in Chicago. That is Chicago PD Superintendent Larry Snelling updating us and speaking about anti-ICE violence there in the city. All right, we want to shift gears now to South Carolina State, Orangeburg, South Carolina. What's happening right now, there's a press conference on campus. Classes canceled after a deadly shooting at South Carolina State. Let's take a listen in to what's being said.
Investigators work to bring those responsible to justice. My family and I remained on campus throughout the weekend. As I walked around on Sunday and spoke with students, I was impressed by their strength and their resiliency in the wake of these tragic circumstances. Last evening, several members of the university administrative staff conducted an online town hall for parents and alumni to discuss campus safety and address their concerns. Well over 1,300 participants were on that call. This morning, I met with faculty and staff for the same purpose. And in just a few moments, I will meet with our great students in a forum organized by our Student Government Association and their president, Ms. Tucker. During homecoming, more than 200 law enforcement officers and security personnel from agencies across the state were on site. These law enforcement personnel worked for more than 2 months to institute safety measures designed to protect students, employees, and visitors to our campus. Despite these coordinated efforts, people intent on disregarding all laws and human life chose to open fire on our campus. Over the last 3 years, South Carolina State University has made significant investments to enhance campus safety. We have installed hundreds of surveillance cameras across the academic, residential, and outdoor areas, increased the number of sworn officers and security personnel, added a gun-sniffing dog, and expanded light and access control systems. All of these measures continue to remain in place. I want to ensure students, parents, and families that the safety of our campus community remains my highest priority. We continually review and improve our security operations in partnership with SLED, local law enforcement, and other professional security experts. We also recognize that this incident has taken an emotional toll on many members of the Bulldog family. Counseling and support services are available to students throughout the Counseling and Self-Development Center and to employees through the Employee Assistance Program. We will continue taking every step necessary to protect our students, employees, and visitors to South Carolina State University. We will ensure that this campus remains a safe, caring environment where learning and growth can thrive. Thank you.
The President will now accept a few questions. Please raise your hand.
President Congressman Garrett Rush from WIS News here. I want to ask a couple of questions here. The first one, was there a question on security as far as the lack of officers at Eugenie, and more specifically with 200 officers being there, was there a plan to have them specifically at the dorms in this moment, or was that not discussed?
No, the 200 officers was spread throughout the entire campus from each gate all across the campus. So again, the 200 officers were stationed throughout the entire campus.
One follow-up question I have, there were 5 guns recovered from the visitors on the tailgate lot or throughout campus prior to that shooting. Is there any commentary as far as that's concerned?
We're still going through that. We're still looking for all of the details on that, working with our local law enforcement experts on that.
And sir, can you clarify the 2 locations where the shootings actually occurred? I know you can't get to specifics with the investigation, but can you clarify exactly where the shootings happened?
One was in the vicinity of Eugenie Suites. The other was in the vicinity of Poplar Hall.
President Conyers, one follow-up question for me as it pertains to the Chief of Public Safety's comments last month before the General Assembly about the need for more officers on campus. And then following this situation, how do we plan to kind of address that as he went before the state legislature asking those questions?
Sure. The comments made last month by Chief Johnson pertain to the daily challenges that nearly every law enforcement agency experienced. This weekend was not the case. This weekend brought in over 200 officers from across all agencies across the state. So while every department is challenged, the incident this weekend did not play into that because we had more than sufficient officers throughout the campus.
Moving forward.
Hi, I'm Martha Rose Brown, the Times and Democrat.
Yes, ma'am.
I was on the call or the town hall that you had last night, and you mentioned that there are some improvements that will be made, including putting a substation at Eugenie Suites. Would you talk about that a little bit, please?
Sure, yes, ma'am. In reviewing the incidents on the campus for the past decade or so, I've come to the conclusion that, we have most of our major incidents happen in the vicinity of Huguenin Suites, and that's because it's a 750-bed sprawling complex. There has been talk for a while before my arrival to placing a substation in the vicinity of Huguenin Suites. I walked the grounds on yesterday with key personnel. I found a location that would suffice without bringing in a kiosk. It would be a hard office, a hard location, and we expect to have a substation or community service office in the immediate vicinity of Huguenin Suites within the next 30 days.
Thank you. Will class be back in session tomorrow? What words, if it is, what words can you give, especially families or parents that are listening?
I will meet with the students momentarily. Depends on that session with our students, and I speak with our students' leaders and my provost, Dr. Evans, and we will make an assessment at that time after meeting with the students on whether or not we will conduct classes tomorrow. Their mental health, their well-being is our #1 priority. We know at some point in time we must try to get back to some normalcy, but with that being in mind, we will continue to assess the situation.
We have time for one more question over here. Thank you.
How can the alumni network community, what kind of support can you ask from them at this time?
We just ask for the alumni community to continue to pray for those affected, to continue to work with the university to acquire additional resources that may be needed. Those are the things that we're asking for alums at this time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. I was just going to ask. The press conference has concluded. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so you heard from South Carolina State University's president after shooting there on campus. It was a weekend of homecoming celebrations at South Carolina State University that turned tragic Saturday night after 2 separate shootings on campus, left 1 person dead, another wounded, prompting a campus lockdown and the cancellation of the homecoming concert, and also yeah. Suspended, yeah. So we just heard from the university's president. So again, as soon as we get more information on this and we get more updates, we'll continue to bring it here on WCNC Plus and on our digital platforms and on WCNC Charlotte. All right, we want to turn back now to Chicago, where we are hearing from Chicago PD's Superintendent Larry Snelling talking about anti-ICE violence. Let's take a listen in.
Now, there may have been an understanding of that, but we want to make sure that our officers are responding on the scene. And this is something that we're going to be talking to our officers about. This is something that we're going to be talking to our leadership so that that message trickles down. If there are exigent circumstances, work now and then talk about your response later. Because you will respond based on the totality of circumstances that you see at the scene right then and there. And if there's split-second decisions that need to be made, we can always explain those actions for those officers.
Final question.
Afternoon, Superintendent. My name is Peter Nikias. I'm a reporter with Illinois Answers.
How are you, Peter?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. I'm curious if at any point during the afternoon you or anyone in your command staff had a conversation with whoever was in command for the different federal agencies and just said, hey, you don't need to use gas because we know how to do crowd control. A lot of the 9th District, 8th District regulars were there. We saw residents calling them out because they knew them from previous interactions. Did you or anyone in your command staff at any point say like, hey, it doesn't need to go down like this?
Well, this is why I said that I'm right now having conversations with federal leadership when it comes to ICE or immigration, so that we can work that part of it out. And this is why I'm saying now that at CPD we're going to show up. Yeah. If we're there and we're in control of the crowd and we're handling that, there's no need for the federal agents to be confronted by these protesters or have the protesters confront them.
Yes, so that's just a point of clarification. I'm glad you brought that up. So I understand absolutely when somebody calls for help, you go. That's like the first thing they tell you in police academy, right? Like you call for help, please show up. So one of the things that we heard from residents on Saturday was that they were pleading with the police for help because the use of gas felt disproportionate to what was being offered from protesters. And I understand that there's limited ability to intervene, but I'm just curious, like why not have that conversation that day of like, hey, guys are here, like we're taking control of the scene.
So here's the deal. As I told you before, our officers were deployed all over the city. So to get enough people there so that everyone felt safe, it took time to do that. Now, again, we can have that conversation on the scene, but if that's not how they're trained, that's probably not going to take much effect. That's why communication afterwards has to happen. And I've already reached out to the leadership and expressed concern about that and what we're going to do moving forward, and that's why the communication has to happen. So the difficulty here has always been around the belief that CPD is working with immigration enforcement, which we're not. And there's always been that difficulty. But right now, I'm standing here to tell you this. I don't really care about what people think about that anymore because I know what we're doing. And I'll just explain that so that we can avoid these types of situations happening in the future. Now, I get what you're saying. That's always, when we're looking at a situation like that, we're looking at it in hindsight, right? And things were kind of all over the place. We now know this was the first time something like this happened involving immigration, where someone rammed a federal agent and a shooting occurred as a result of it. Box federal agents did, and a shooting occurred. This was the first time this happened. This is why we're doing an after action, so that we can better respond to this the next time something like this happens.
Thank you. Thank you.
So hold on. Listen, I just need to address another thing, and this is very important. There's a lot of heat out there around the chief of patrol, and I'm going to make this clear. The chief of patrol would never tell someone to stand down when any fellow law enforcement agent is in trouble or in need of help. Now, I will say there was a lot of miscommunication, talking points back and forth about what was really happening out there on the ground, and we need to do better. And if we screw something up, we mess up, we fess up. We fix it. But what I will tell you is this. I'm going to tell you about a man with 30 years on this job who has been out there and handled over 400 protests as the chief of patrol. A man who stands on the front line with all of his officers. And I know this for a fact because I stand out there with him. The weekend of Mexican independence, he was out there every single day, worked 18 hours every day, out there with his troops. The DNC, the No Kings March, every protest involving the Palestinians, protests over Gaza, protests over immigration. The man is out there. He has worked on the south side, the west side, downtown. The man loves this job, and he loves his officers. And I'm telling you this from the perspective of someone who sits and talks with this man every day. He rarely goes home. He wants to make sure that each and every one of these officers goes home safely. He has the respect of the protests and the protesters and the people who lead these protest groups. He has a relationship with them. He knows how to talk to people. He knows how to deal with people. And the fact that someone could post one thing without any background, with any context, without any information, put lies out there about this man and what he has given to this city, what he has given to this department. I'm just going to stand here and tell you right now, if I were to turn my back on this man because of political BS, and yes, political BS, and people's political beliefs, I would be a coward. That's not going to happen. That's my partner in crime. I will go to war with this man. I'm not going to allow anybody to rake this man over the coals. The DNC could not have been a success without him. Couldn't have been without him. So, you can't be pro-police when you need something. And then anti when it's politically advantageous. You either believe that the job of policing is a tough job or you don't. You either believe in law and order or you don't. We're going to judge a person based on a post. This man has served this city with honor. And I'm going to stand with him till the end. This man's brother was a federal agent who is now deceased. He talks about it. He talks about where he came from. Small town, poor man, with similar stories. Never thought he'd be the chief of patrol and thankful for it every single day. When I talked to him, he was concerned that our officers who go there would be exposed to chemical agents without their masks. He wanted to make sure that these officers were well prepared if they got there. He wanted to protect his officers. But when we got the information, which I got directly from the head of Border Patrol, that the agents had been involved in the shooting, they had been boxed in, we talked. He immediately redeployed resources to the location to get more people there. See, when you don't know the whole story, it's easy to go online and listen to those who are trolling. I don't really care about that because I know the facts. So I've always said this, and I tell this to my officers. There are two things that you can look at. You can look at your reputation, and you can look at your character. People can determine your reputation. All they have to do is go to social media and tell a lie. Put something up there, post it. But what they can never take away is your character. Because I know the man's character, he knows his character. His family knows his character. Reputation. I never worry about someone's reputation until I have a conversation with them and I get to know their character. People will say your reputation precedes you. It does until you get to know a man or a woman's character. And I'm telling you right now, in law enforcement, with everything that all of us in law enforcement have been through over the years, we cannot turn our backs on each other because of what was posted online. When we do things like that, we're failing each other. How can we talk about anyone else who doesn't support us as police officers if we're not supporting each other? We have to do better. And I'm telling you, Chief Hine is a man of character. And I'm standing here saying this to you, and I don't really care what anybody has to say about it, and I'm going to stand with him. He is my chief of patrol. We will protect this city. We are going to protect all of our law enforcement agents when we're out there. But most of all, we serve the residents of this city. And we are going to protect you. That's what we're here for. That's what he's concerned about, which is why I chose him as chief of patrol. He cares about this city, and he cares about the residents of this city. He cares about law enforcement. And we're going to make sure that we protect everybody in this city and keep calm in this city. This is our city. The Chicago Police Department is one hell of a department with some amazing people out there working, putting their lives on the line to keep this city safe. And we're going to continue to do so. We're going to show up when absolutely necessary. So I thank you for coming, but look for us out there to do exactly what I said we're going to do, because we've got the best people to get that job done. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
Super real quick, were you okay with how gas was used in Brighton Park? Not that it was used, but how it was used.
Do you feel Kristi Noem is unfairly amplifying narratives like that without
Yes.
knowing all the facts?
It's done. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys, for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks. Be careful on your way out.
You want to answer the gas question, Sue?
It's done.
All right, so that is a press conference with Chicago Police. It just wrapped up. That is Superintendent Larry Snelling leaving the podium, addressing violence and some of the protests that we've seen in Chicago regarding ICE. And so Superintendent Larry Snelling addressing that. Come back out here. We are right here at the top of the hour, 2:58. Thank you for staying with us here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. So we've mentioned it. We've talked about it throughout the afternoon. We are in day 6 of federal government shutdown. We heard from the White House. We heard from Representative Hakeem Jeffries. He was on the Today Show this morning addressing it. We also heard from House Speaker Mike Johnson. So we want to go and play that for you in case you missed it. He addressed the government shutdown again. We are in day 6. Let's take a listen into what House Speaker Mike Johnson had to say earlier today.
Well, good morning, everyone. Here we are again in another day of Democrat shutdown. So I wanted to come out and just share with you some thoughts, answer some questions, tell you, I guess, reiterate the simple truths of how we got here. Those truths have been obscured just a bit because the Democrats are in a relentless effort to spin the facts. But it's always good when the facts and the evidence are on your side. And I don't want you to listen to the arguments of politicians. If you're watching at home, I want you to look at the real facts. And I'm going to try to here in a very abbreviated summary manner to present those to you. And the facts are very clear. Okay, so the first fact is by way of reminder, how did we get here? Why is Washington tied into a knot right now? Well, I became Speaker almost 2 years ago, and I was frustrated, as most rank-and-file members of Congress are, frustrated about how Congress really doesn't work that well for the American people. That's why people are frustrated about it. We don't spend money responsibly here. We haven't for many years. And the reason for that is because typically, for the annual funding of the government, it's done in a back room. Literally, there's a deal made by the top 4 leaders in Congress, and that's hoisted upon the members, usually at the end of the year, right before a holiday, in an omnibus spending bill. Sometimes the bills are thousands of pages long, and it's always said that few members have fully read it or understood it. That's largely true because they weren't involved in the process. So when I became Speaker, I've been doggedly determined to make this House and the Senate work again, to do right by the American people, to get the process, to rebuild the muscle memory, to get back to the way it is supposed to work. And what does that mean? It means that Congress is supposed to carefully deliberate over 12 separate appropriations bills every year. Why? Because we We divide the spending of the taxpayers' funds into 12 categories so that everybody can go through that. And all the elected members, the duly elected representatives of the people, can come here and have a debate and a discussion. We do that through the Appropriations Committee, they're the specialists on it, the members of the House and Senate who work on it around the clock, 365, every day of the year. And then they put together a product. It goes to the full body in the House and then the full body in the Senate, and they work on that together, and they come up with the most efficient and effective way that they can build consensus around to spend the taxpayers' funds. Well, we started that process back this year, and I'm so proud to tell you that we're rebuilding the muscle memory. It's like pushing a boulder uphill, but we've got it done. And we worked 12 separate appropriations bills through the House Appropriations Committee. I mean, they worked hard in a bipartisan fashion, Republicans and Democrats. They worked on it steadily. We got 3 of those bills on the floor. We debated them on the floor. We passed them on the House floor. And we sent that over to the Senate. Meanwhile, the Senate passed 3 of their own bills off the floor. That hasn't happened around here in many years. And all of that process that I just described takes a lot of time and a lot of work and energy and effort. And our appropriators, while they were working in good faith, they ran out of time. Why? Because the end of the fiscal year is September 30th, not December 31. And so the clock was just running out. So what we did, because Republicans are in charge of both houses right now, is the responsible thing. Leader Thune in the Senate and I in the House, we sat down with our appropriators and we said, let's come up with a simple stopgap measure to keep the lights on and keep the government open so that appropriators can finish this very healthy process for the people they represent. And so we put together a very simple, clean, continuing resolution. Why do we say it's clean? Because there's nothing to it. It's 24 pages. It's the bare minimum. It just says, keep the status quo, which, by the way, for all my Democrat friends, is the Biden-era policies and spending that we haven't been able to fix yet. We're in the process of getting appropriations done to repair all that, but we needed more time to do it. So in a bipartisan fashion, Democrats and Republicans got together and said, you know what? Fine, let's extend this until November 21st. The Democrats in the House agreed to that. That was the date. We put that bill on the floor. We passed it out of the House in bipartisan fashion. And we sent it over to the Senate. Well, now we expected, I thought, that Chuck Schumer would do what he's always done. The man has served in Congress 3/4 of my life, I think. And he has given impassioned speeches over the year, most recently in March of this year, that you have to fund continuing resolutions. You can't shut the government down because it's irresponsible and painful for the American people. He was right in March. He is not right today, which leads me to fact number 2. Fact number 1 was how we got here. Fact number 2 is why are we in this mess? Why did Chuck Schumer change his tune, and why is he now saying exactly the opposite of what he said 6 months ago? A picture's worth 10,000 words, okay? This is a copy of the Washington Examiner. Zoom in on that, all right? If you can't see this at home, I just had this on my desk in a big stack, and I found it. This is published March of 2025, March 26 exactly. It's a picture of Chuck Schumer looking very upset, very angry, walking out with a box, and all the House Democrats depicted their character, saying that he's an enemy of democracy. Why is he an enemy of democracy? Because the far left base in the Democrat Party has turned on Chuck Schumer because he did the responsible thing, get the lights on. Why? Because they want him to show a fight against President Trump. So Schumer doesn't want to be in this situation again. So he said, my gosh, he got his staff together and he got the far left wing of the party. He said, what do you want? What do you want me to fight on? So they created a red herring. A red herring is a distraction. They decided that they would pick a fight on health care. Well, let me look right into the camera and tell you very clearly, Republicans are the ones concerned about health care. Republicans are the party working around the clock every day to fix health care. This is not talking points for us. We've done it. A big part of the One Big Beautiful Bill, the Working Families Tax Cut, was to fix health care. Healthcare is broken in America. It's too expensive. The quality of care needs to rise. We need more access for more people, and we have lots of ideas to do that. But that issue is for debate in the next 3 months. It always was. We have members working on that. The tax credit, the subsidy you've heard about that expires December 31st, there's a lot of thoughtful debate and discussion that has already been going on about that and will go on about that. But that's a December 31 issue. So Chuck Schumer is scrambling. He has to have an issue. None of their policies are very popular, so they decided to lob onto health care. And he decided to claim to all of you that that is the issue with government funding. It is not. Those are two totally separate things. The clean continuing resolution would simply keep the lights on so that the members in the House and Senate can have those debates on health care. We were always planning, and we have lots of ideas on the table on how to fix it, but we don't yet have consensus on it because it's very complicated. We have time to do it. The month of October is a critically important time for us to get the House and Senate working on that very issue, but they're delaying it because they needed a red herring. So in his desperation, we get to fact number 3. In his desperation, they decided to create the red herring. They decided to claim that this is all about health care, which the September funding issue never was. That's a December policy issue. He tried to create it as a September funding issue. And in his desperation, they hastily filed an outrageous counter proposal. It is a wild wish list of big government liberal nonsense that we can't do. Their priorities that they crammed into this. Now remember, a simple 7-week stopgap funding measure, the CR, that we passed out of the House in bipartisan fashion was sent over. And Chuck Schumer filed a counterproposal. Now this is his words, not mine. These are not Republican talking points. These are the facts. 2 exhibits real quick, because I've shown you before. This is page 57, an excerpt of his bill, section 2141, where you see that right there that they want to repeal the health subtitle of the big, beautiful bill. The one big, beautiful bill, the Republicans got signed into law July 4th. The working families tax cut, we're so proud of that because it has so many amazing things for all the American people, a marquee piece of legislation. But among the most important were the reforms that we did to health care. Why? Because Medicaid, for example, is broken. Medicaid doesn't work well. It's underfunded and it was full of fraud, waste, and abuse. And we took our opportunity to fix that, and we did. So what did we do? We went into Medicaid and we said, we got to stop the waste and abuse. We got to make sure that illegal aliens are not on Medicaid. Medicaid is intended for U.S. citizens only, not illegals who break our law and come over the border. And we got to make sure that young, able-bodied men who do not have dependents are working and not riding the wagon. Work is good for individuals. It's good for the communities they live in. It's good for their own well-being and for the people around them. And so we said, don't sit on your couch and play video games. By the way, also not a talking point. There was an AEI study, I think one of the organizations that polled this, and most of these young men who are not working are sitting around literally playing video games. Get back to work. So we put that in the law. And the big thing was making sure that an estimated 1.4 million illegal aliens are no longer riding that wagon either. Why? Because Medicaid had to be strengthened. Medicaid is intended for the elderly, the disabled, and young pregnant women, as I use an example, who are in difficult situations. They need the resources desperately, but the resources are being drained by people who were never intended to be there. And so Republicans got busy and fixed it. We put it in the big, beautiful bill. So, back to fact number 3, I guess I'm still on. Chuck Schumer files a counterproposal and says, we want to reverse all that. Well, among the effects, among the things that he would reverse is putting illegal aliens back on the program. Don't take my word for it. Look at the evidence. Over here at Exhibit B. This is the list of the actual provisions that would be reversed if Chuck Schumer's language was voted on and passed. Among those, it would end. See, these are the provisions, the Working Families Tax Cut Act. These are the provisions of our bill that did each of these things. We ended Medicaid funding for most non-citizens. They would reverse that, and it would cost American taxpayers, hardworking Americans, an estimated $6.2 billion. And you see, you just go down the list. The California loophole. You know what they did in California? Gavin Newsom and the team out in California? They expanded Medicaid to cover all able-bodied illegal alien adults. These men who could be working or whatever. I mean, they're not even citizens, never intended by Congress. They put that on the tab of the taxpayer. And so we reversed it. Chuck Schumer would repeal that. He would repeal those repairs, and this is what it would cost you. Do the math. I won't go through each line, but it's on the website, speaker.gov. You can pull this up. It amounts to $192 billion, $192.8 billion. So almost $200 billion that Chuck Schumer wants to put back in. Also, by the way, while he's repealing our health subtitle, he would also repeal the $50 billion that Republicans put into the bill to support our rural hospitals around the country. Why would Chuck Schumer do that? Because he's desperate for political cover. Let me keep going on this.
All right, folks, Vanessa Rufus here in the Live Impact News studio taking over for Nick Sturdivant. We are going to pivot away from House Speaker Mike Johnson just moments ago addressing the ongoing government shutdown to a live feed that is just getting underway here in the Live Impact News studio. Looks like we've got the White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller about to address reporters. We don't know on which topics. Typically the setup, reporters ask him questions and he answers them, although I know recently he was on Network News discussing the lawsuits over National Guard deployments. So let's listen in to hear what he has to say.
As you know, we went through this in California with Newsom. He made a total fool of himself, pretending he had authority to defy a lawful presidential command of the National Guard. We won in the very liberal Ninth Circuit, and a portion of the California National Guard has remained federalized to this day.
Should James Comey be perp-walked? Should James Comey be perp-walked? What other cities is the administration considering sending National Guard troops?
Right. So, no, but there's different events happening in different cities. So here in Washington, D.C., right, working collaboratively and cooperatively with the mayor, we have a large-scale public safety surge. And as part of that public safety surge, we have obviously all your federal components. I think it's 22 agencies in all. And you have your state, your city resources, and then of course the National Guard. In Memphis, very much been modeled off of D.C., where we have, or is being modeled off of D.C., we have the full interagency, IRS, ATF, DEA, FBI, and HSI. And then you have, in that case, also the state resources too, the state troopers, state investigatory agencies, then the National Guard. So that's one model. Then in the case of Portland, you have an acute crisis with threats to life and property at the Portland ICE facility. And so that is a reactive deployment. There is a acute ongoing threat to lives and property. And so National Guard was dispatched to protect ICE officers and their property in the conduct of their duties at a federal building. The president has also said that in the immediate future, in Chicago, there's a need for the same. Obviously, you saw, for example, there was 2 vehicle ramming attacks against ICE officers in Chicago. The president has indicated in the future there might be additional resources brought to Chicago. But the most recent order that he signed relates to the ICE mission. I hope that answers your question.
The reason I asked that, Mr. Miller, is the president has floated other cities, perhaps New Orleans. Is that still consideration? And is the administration actively considering others?
Yeah, Governor Landry sent a request, as you know, and so we're working with Governor Landry as we speak to figure out an appropriate next step. I'm not going to sit here and say, advance what is next. Obviously, in the case, Memphis is a good example, a good model, where the governor reached out to us. He said we've had, in fact, I think Memphis, for many years, had the highest per capita murder rate in the country. He said that Memphis has been suffering from unimaginable levels of crime for years. We want your help. We want the full Washington, D.C. package. As a side note, we meet every week with city leaders here in Washington, D.C., and this has proven to be, in their own mind, in their own words, one of the most extraordinary things that anybody has ever seen.
Stephen, you said the other day that you want to use legitimate state power to dismantle left-wing terror networks. Which organizations were you talking about, and what kind of state power are you envisioning using?
It's a great question, thank you. And I'm glad for the opportunity to add a couple more details to that. So, the struggle that's taking place right now is between the lawful exercise of power by the American people through a duly elected government versus the unlawful exercise of street violence in the form of domestic terrorism. So, again, the clearest example of this is when you have ICE officers who are carrying out the statutes and laws of the United States to arrest and remove illegal aliens, who are being subjected to violent attacks in the conduct of their duties. That's an example of illegitimate violence, illegitimate power in the form of domestic terrorism being used to impede the conduct of their official duties. The answer to that, in a civilized, modern, civilized society, is to use legitimate state power, grand juries, subpoenas, arrest warrants, search warrants, and every other federal power at the disposal of the commander-in-chief to identify and find everybody who is trying to use the real and actual threat of violence to impede the conduct of these federal responsibilities and ensure that they're placed behind bars. I'm not going to give you any advanced information about what these investigations have yielded so far. The Joint Terrorism Task Force has the lead, but they have found that these campaigns, that's not, of course, only against ICE officers. There's also a conversation we're having about the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the 2 attempted assassinations against President Trump, the assassination of the United Healthcare CEO, the attempted assassination of Justice Kavanaugh, which, of course, had an insane sentence of 8 years. So it's the broader spectrum of political violence, but obviously ICE as an agency has been subjected to a 9-month effort to substitute left-wing violence for the votes of the American people. No federal officer in the conduct of their duties should have to worry about being physically attacked, being physically obstructed, being physically impeded, being doxxed, having a bounty put on them. And the fact that Democrat politicians are trying to normalize this really indicates how far we've gone as a society, that there is not universal condemnation of this organized campaign of violence against ICE officers.
Wait, no, but just to follow up. I don't know of many Democratic politicians who have endorsed these terrible incidences that you just referred to. And I also don't know of any evidence that there's some kind of vast underlying organization funding them. Is that what you're indicating is happening here?
Yes, in fact, we know that it's true. But obviously...
You think Tyler Robinson was being funded by some terrorist organization?
No, what I said was that you asked whether there was some larger criminal conspiracy relating to domestic terrorism in this country. And I said, yes, there absolutely is. Now, of course, Antifa has been designated as a domestic terrorist organization. This is only one example of many in which we have, it's typically a continuum of violence. It involves both organized doxing, it involves violent threats and intimidation, it involves explicit calls to commit violence against a targeted person. And then that tends to escalate into physically violent and obstructive acts. And so it's this continuum that we see over and over again, where they're trying to use illegal violence and intimidation to disturb the operations of the federal government and federal personnel. And we see this playing out over and over and over again.
They? Antifa isn't actually an organization, right?
Yes. Spoken several times about how sanctuary city leaders and state leaders, they might face charges for human smuggling and harboring illegal aliens. Also spoken about 8 U.S.C. 1324. And, it's since gotten worse. And today, Brandon Johnson signed an executive order prohibiting use of city property for federal immigration operations.
By the way, that's a great example. On the Brandon Johnson, it's an example of how I was asked the question of, well, do you have any example that this behavior hasn't been condemned by Democrat officials? Well, I can get one better. The mayor of Chicago not only has failed to condemn the violent obstructive acts against ICE and law enforcement, but in the aftermath of 2 coordinated attempted murders of ICE officers through vehicle ramming attacks, he issued a no-go zone for ICE officers. What do we think would happen if, say, under a Democrat administration, Republican officials declared no-go zones for the FBI? What do you think the reaction to that would be? How many people do you think would be arrested and placed into jail over that? It's just important to understand these are not isolated incidents. If you can't see, then you don't want to see. In other words, if you can't see that since we've taken office, there has been a organized, systematized campaign to delegitimize, dehumanize, threaten, impede, obstruct, and physically assault ICE officers in the conduct of their duties, then I can't persuade you of it because you're choosing not to see what's right in front of your face.
Do you believe that James Comey should be perp?
Yes, back there, sorry.
Jay Jones has not dropped out of the race for Attorney General in Virginia. He's under immense pressure to do so. Yes. He hasn't. Does that surprise you?
Sadly, it doesn't surprise me. Look, what you saw with the Jay Jones comments, and it's a piece of this whole conversation, was the deeply held inner monologue of a high-ranking Democrat. They're someone who rose to the top of the ranks of the Democrat Party. So if you read the text message exchange, it's clear that he talks this way often and frequently. That is his homicidal ideation and his fantasies about elaborate murder and torture is something that clearly he is comfortable with and is doing frequently. So you have to ask yourself, what kind of system is someone operating in where they speak so freely and commonly about, again, elaborate murder plus against people they work with? What kind of system brings somebody up like that and elevates them to the point of nearly being the Attorney General? That's a system that has absorbed this narrative that we see so often, which is that the Republican Party, and in particular that the Trump movement, again from the Democrat narrative, is basically, this is a term I've seen, is unpersoned, right? That they dehumanize you to the point of not having a right to live. And so we saw this, of course, with the 4 years of lawfare against President Trump and the desire to incarcerate him for life. Then, of course, that kind of eliminationist conduct and rhetoric then leads and gives rise to more violent behavior like attempted assassinations. And now, of course, because so much of this conduct was never punished over time, now we see so many Americans, not all Americans, of course many foreigners too, who feel very comfortable engaging in direct day-to-day violence against ICE officers. It's a common experience for ICE officers when they're conducting an arrest to be physically assaulted by others while they are carrying out an arrest. So you might be arresting, say, a child pornography illegal alien, and you will get physically assaulted while you're doing it. Now ICE have to worry about getting sniped from rooftops when they're coming and going from their facilities. And we've normalized the idea, not I haven't, of course, and you haven't, but others have, that ICE officers should have to work in a federal building every single day where they're attacked going in, they're attacked going out, where every night there has to be street battle against armed insurrectionists every single night, night after night after night. That's normal. You ask why we need the National Guard, why we need troops? Because it takes hundreds of additional personnel, far beyond the resources of the federal officials working in Portland, to hold a secure perimeter, to provide freedom of movement. And it's not enough, by the way, you're an ICE officer just to stand here and put the line back here, right? They're under sniping attacks. They're going to get rocks hurled at them, right? They're in physical danger. So you have to clear a safe perimeter so that ICE officers can carry out their duties without being an imminent threat of physical harm. And the fact that we've normalized these attacks on ICE officers, that is how you end up in a society in which domestic terrorism becomes the norm, and eventually elections don't carry the day because violence beats votes. And that's what we're seeing attempted. And so when we see a muscular response from the federal government, it's because we're not going to let violence beat votes. Next question.
Stephen, 3 months from now, yes, when we're having this conversation in December, what do you see the end game being? Because you clearly don't have trust in some certain local and state law enforcement entities. And so where do you see the National Guard, where do you see the military going? You suggested that if the courts rule against you, you will find other ways to use the military. That would lead me to believe that there's a conversation about the Insurrection Act that is taking place. What should Americans expect over the next 3.5 years, understanding that there is a real likelihood that those same local law enforcement and state officials will never, ever cooperate with your efforts? Should people expect the National Guard and the military in their streets over the next 3.5 years?
Well, I think that was, so to be clear, you talk about the National Guard in the streets. So right now in Portland, we're talking about having National Guard deployed to secure a federal building in Portland. And so there's a lot of elements to your question, and I'll try to get to all of them. But when I hear comments from Democrat officials saying that this violence from the left is being provoked, their word, by the presence of federal officials, think about how broken of a sentence that is, right? In other words, if tomorrow we went to, say, Dothan, Alabama, and there was a federal building there, and we put 100 police officers in front of it, they wouldn't be attacked. Nobody would throw rocks at them. Nobody would try to shoot them. Nobody would do anything. They would say, hello, good morning. Maybe they'd get them a cup of coffee before they go out for the shift for the day. They'd ask, how are your kids doing? How are your kids doing? The fact that Democrats think that their own base cannot contain their desire to inflict violence upon the mere sight. In other words, National Guard's not being sent there proactively. They're being sent there reactively to defend ICE officers under siege. So in theory, if ICE officers were in the building and the National Guard was in the building and nobody was violently attacking them, the only thing that you would see is there's a building, there's ICE officers, there's guardsmen. The violence is entirely rioters choosing to show up and wage violence at a specific federal building. They've handed out flyers. I saw one at Deep Flyer recently, and it said, we need to mobilize around the Broadview facilities, this is in Chicago, to shut down ICE. So what does that mean? When they say we're going to mobilize to shut down ICE, what are they saying? They're saying they're going to carry out insurrection against the federal government by using force, obstructive force, to keep ICE officers from going out and conducting arrests. Would we ever tolerate this with any other law enforcement agency? If we said shut down the FBI and say, let's pick one of the organizations that the media might understand better. So let's say the Proud Boys said we're going to shut down the FBI, and they went and they decided they formed a human obstructive wall in front of the entry and exit to the Washington field office of the FBI, and they attacked anybody coming and going. How many nights do you think that situation will persist for? Not even one, let alone over 100. We all understand this to be true. So to your other question, yes, the president has multiple statutory authorities under federal law to secure a federal building. And so when a court issues an injunction, the only activity that's enjoined is what's specifically enjoined in that order, not activity that isn't addressed or spoken to. Or there was another part, in 3 or 4 months. So this is the most important point I can make. This is the behavior of the anti-ICE rioters, violent attack stalkers, is motivated by a desire to achieve a concrete outcome. In other words, their objective is fewer ICE arrests in Chicago, fewer ICE arrests in Portland. So very straightforwardly, the way to end this ongoing assault is to demonstrate that they will fail completely and totally. In other words, if you were able to secure these buildings using additional resources, you're not having your entire federal law enforcement apparatus doing nothing but physical building security. If you're able to use the National Guard to secure these buildings and free up your ICE officers and your FBI agents and everyone else to go out and do enforcement in the community, to go out and find dangerous predators and remove them, you will demonstrate very conclusively, as we did in Los Angeles, by the way, that all your riots and violence will get you is more deportations.
That has happened in Washington, D.C. That has happened in Washington, D.C. Has it not? And yet the men and women of the National Guard remain here in the streets instead of being at home.
Well, it's a great example, but not in the way that you phrased it. I know you all have questions, but it's
But why? But I think that's where, if you're a democratic city, you're looking at Washington, D.C. and saying, right, they complied, there is no mass protest, and the crime, President Trump said it's a crime-free city now, so why are the National Guard remaining? And that is why they're such an affront.
You're adjacent to a great point. But the reason why there's peace and calm in the city is because the criminal element is understood that their criminal activity will not achieve their desired outcome. That's the most important point.
So you support them remaining in the streets of these American cities? Long-term?
Here in Washington, D.C., the National Guard, as John Fetterman has said, is one of the most wonderful things that ever happened to the city. It means you can go out to the National Mall and not have to worry about being attacked. But the other thing is
But you support them in American cities long-term?
The National Guard deployment is part of a cohesive public safety operation, like in D.C. and like in Memphis, is an extraordinary blessing. The tragedy that I see is
So you support them in American cities long-term?
I answered the question the way that I did. The tragedy that I see is when you have a 6-year-old boy, as happened recently, whose killer, who stabbed him in the head till the knife was blunt, got released from jail on good behavior. The tragedy is when you try to murder Supreme Court justice and you're out of jail in 8 years. Right? The tragedy is when you have somebody who's been in and out of the criminal justice system for well over a decade with 39 arrests, like in North Carolina, and can just walk up to an innocent Ukrainian refugee and knife her to death in the throat. That's the thing that gets me upset, and that's the thing that gets the American people upset. And the second thing to your question is, putting people in jail who are committing this terrorist activity is the #1 most important deterrent.
But you long-term believe that over the next 3.5 years, that military in American cities...
Move on to the next
Sure, but
question.
I am understanding that to be accurate.
Thank you.
Stephen, last week, Director Vogt paused infrastructure funding in New York City, the subway, the Hudson River Tunnel, and then he also paused funds in Chicago. They were connected to DEI, but I mean, can we expect, for one, is the administration going after infrastructure projects in Democratic-led cities, and are there other cities that the administration
It's a great question for Russ Vogt. I'll do two more.
I didn't hear your full interview with CNN, so just to be clear here, will the administration abide by the judge's ruling? And then also, could you just clarify, is the administration actively looking into other legal avenues to deploy the National Guard to work in? Okay. I know you don't want to get into specifics.
So yes, the administration is going through the appellate process to obtain relief from the ruling, just as we did in the Ninth Circuit in California. And at the same time, we're availing ourselves of all available options, and we'll examine them. All right, I get you 2 more questions.
Venezuela, do you want to see Maduro out of Venezuela? What's next there?
I don't know to add to that other than what the Attorney General and the Secretary of State has said, which is that there's a $50 million bounty that has been placed on Maduro in connection to his indictment as a narco-terrorist drug trafficker, and he needs to be brought to justice for the crimes for which he was convicted in an American court. Venezuela is run by a drug cartel that is guilty of not only flooding our nation with TDA and other foreign terrorists, but of course helping to kill hundreds of thousands of Americans through deadly drugs.
Do you believe that So we've heard that the president is considering cutting off funding, certain aid to Portland. What is the timeline on that, and what is he considering cutting off?
I'll get an update from Russ. Yes, sorry.
So regarding the shutdown, both the president and the House Speaker sort of alluded to being open to reforms to Obamacare. What reforms to the ACA would the White House actually support?
My only comment on the shutdown right now is that Democrats should support a clean funding bill to reopen the government, and that it's outrageous to shut the government down in an attempt to get free health care for illegal aliens. Time for one more question. Yeah, back there, Brian.
You called a legal ruling legal insurrection. Are you recommending the president take action against judges whose rulings he disagrees with?
No, it's simply a factually accurate statement that when a judge assumes for him or herself the powers that have been relegated or delegated by the Constitution to the president, that is a form of a legal insurrection, and we have seen.
Insurrection carries a legal weight. So, are you recommending? We
have seen over the last 9 months a ongoing legal insurrection in which district court judges, as a class, in many cases, have issued, which is why they've been overturned so much, have issued rulings that are flagrantly unlawful and unconstitutional, and it is an insurrection against the laws and Constitution of the United States, and we need to have district courts in this country that see themselves as being under the laws and Constitution and not being able to take for themselves powers that are reserved solely for the president. One more question.
Is Pharma relief going to be announced this week?
Sorry, back there.
Why are White House staffers being let go?
Don't have no information on that.
Stephen, on James Comey, this week James Comey is being arraigned. Do you believe that he should be perp walked? Is he above the law? Is Christopher Wray next? And
I sure hope. I don't think to say this. I sure hope that James Comey's not above the law, and I think the American people want to make sure that James Comey is held to the full legal standard to which any American who committed similar crimes would be subjected. Next to you, one last question.
Thank you. As we're seeing a surge of attacks on ICE agents, including, for example, the shooting in Dallas, and this weekend in Chicago, 10 cars, surrounding ICE agents, another one ramming into an ICE vehicle. To what extent does the administration believe that such attacks are organized? And based on that possibility, or we're alluding to Antifa, how does that change your calculation and how the administration is going to respond to these attacks?
All right, folks. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller taking questions from reporters. Obviously a big topic right now. The lawsuits underway over National Guard deployments to various cities across the U.S. We are actually going to pivot to something that's not too far away from that discussion, because we have Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker and other officials with Illinois speaking on the lawsuit that has just been filed over the National Guard deployment to Chicago. And essentially what we have here, the blurb that we received from officials, they're addressing the Trump administration's efforts to, in their words, militarize American cities. Let's listen in right now.
On the authority granted by Congress with regards to deploying the National Guard. The militia clauses of the United States Constitution give Congress sole authority to decide what factual circumstances allow the president to federalize the National Guard. The Posse Comitatus Act prohibits members of the military from engaging in civilian law enforcement. And just last month, a judge in California recognized that fact. Our local law enforcement have shown time and time again that they are effective at maintaining peace throughout Illinois. And the 10th Amendment preserves the state's sovereignty and right to do so. And there is no need or justification for a militarized response to anything going on in Chicago. It is unfair to National Guardsmen. It is unfair to local law enforcement. And it is certainly unfair to the law-abiding citizens of Illinois who do not want to be subject to military occupation. The only situations that are out of control are certain ICE and Customs Border Patrol officers who are engaged in shocking overreach in occupation. The only situations that are out of control are certain ICE and Customs Border Patrol officers who are engaged in shocking overreach in an attempt to create a crisis. In fact, President Trump's own statements over time demonstrate that this is not at all about an emergency. He said specifically that he wants to use American cities as military training grounds. He has threatened, using a meme, Chicago about to find out why it's called the Department of War. He has disparaged and threatened to deploy in Chicago for weeks. This is not about an emergency. This is a political targeting, utilizing our military. This is not about the federal government being unable to do their job through normal channels. This is about a president's unconstitutional desire to take the unprecedented action of militarizing American cities. But just this weekend, a judge in Oregon issued a temporary restraining order stopping the administration similar actions in Oregon. As the judge said in the ruling, this is a nation of constitutional law, not martial law. Donald Trump's derogatory comments about the city of Chicago started even before he took office. Without any official communication with the state, Operation Midway Blitz began bringing federal immigration teams in unconstitutional detentions and raids that have caused mass panic and protest and injuries. And the shooting of a Franklin Park resident and father during an attempted warrantless vehicle stop by federal agents. Throughout the month of September, it is federal agents who have escalated tactics, with the head of the Customs and Border Patrol operations in Chicago threatening that ICE would bring a shit show to Broadview, which is what they have created. It was not until September 26 that a memo from DHS was sent to the Department of Defense requesting 100 troops to be sent to protect ICE facilities in Illinois, presumably in reference to Broadview. That memo was emailed to a member of the Illinois National Guard on September 29th, requesting troops to integrate with federal law enforcement operations. The state received no further communication until the morning of October 4th, a Saturday. At that time, Adjutant General Rodney Boyd received a call from the U.S. military asking them to start the process of calling up 300 members of the Illinois National Guard. It was followed by a memo stating that the President has directed the mobilization of at least 300 members of the Illinois National Guard to protect the federal personnel, functions, and property in Illinois, with no further specifics. The memo explicitly stated that if the state did not agree to the request within 2 hours, the Secretary of the Department of Defense would federalize and deploy as many National Guard troops as he wants. Because there is no public safety need or other emergency requiring the National Guard intervention, Illinois again declined to voluntarily call up troops that we don't need or want. Saturday night, General Boyd received a memo purporting to call the Illinois National Guard into federal service under Section 12406 of the U.S. Code, even over the objection of the governor. The stated reason for the order is to protect ICE and other U.S. government personnel and federal property. They provided no information about threat assessments or planned operations that were referenced in the memo. I'm here to say that the President's actions are illegal. The President has failed to establish that any of the legal prerequisites exist for his efforts to mobilize the National Guard's troops here. No president can flout the Constitution. I said we will not hesitate to fight any unlawful deployment, and I want to make sure to make clear that our prayer for relief includes barring the threatened deployment of the National Guard from the state of Texas or anywhere else. Last night, we became aware of an undated memo from Secretary Hexas to Adjutant General of Texas, federalizing the Texas National Guard for service in Illinois, Oregon, and other locations. Deployment of the military to Illinois is unlawful and unconstitutional, no matter where these forces come from. I want to lift up the hardworking lawyers in the Attorney General's office who worked at all times of the night and the wee morning. We were communicating at ungodly hours to put together this complaint. As we speak, the team is just coming from arguing for a temporary restraining order. These same lawyers and others on my staff, as well as on the governor's staff and the city corporation council staff, toiled over the past year responding to numerous threats, and our lawyers have, as you know, filed over 40 lawsuits. These lawyers are the true American heroes. Collectively, we will continue to fight on behalf of the citizens of Illinois and the American people at large. With that, I'd like to pass it on to our mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. Thank you to the governor. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I'm grateful for all of the elected leaders that are here, our congressional delegation, as well as our Cook County Board President, which you'll hear from shortly. Today I stand with all of our elected officials and community leaders in denouncing President Trump's declared war on Chicago and Illinois. I'm proud the city of Chicago is joining the state of Illinois in our lawsuit against the Trump administration's unlawful deployment of the National Guard in our city and in our state. I've promised that the city of Chicago will do everything in our power to protect the constitutional rights of all Chicagoans. This lawsuit is the latest demonstration of our commitment. Let me be absolutely clear. The president is not sending military troops to Chicago to keep us safe. We know this because Trump has a history of targeting Chicago. He issued a series of executive orders attempting to defund so-called sanctuary jurisdictions and sue the city over our welcoming city ordinance. A federal judge recently dismissed that lawsuit, and the courts have prevented the Trump administration from restricting the city's funding based on our local laws. Now that the president has lost those cases, he is changing tactics to send in the Guard. He has stated his intentions outright to use our neighborhoods as training grounds for our military. He told them that they are, and they must be, prioritized in order to, in his words, defending the homeland against the invasion from within in American cities run by, quote, radical left Democrats, specifically including the city of Chicago. The only radical is a president trying to deploy National Guard from across the country into our city. We do not need or want the National Guard to police our streets. We want to continue our holistic strategies and partnerships that have led to the safest summer in the city of Chicago in 60 years. Not only will a National Guard deployment make our communities less safe, but it will also have a chilling effect on economic activity in Chicago, as we have seen in other jurisdictions where the president deployed the Guard. And furthermore, deployment of the National Guard will impose costs on CPD and other city departments who will have to respond to protest activity and any issues that may arise from the deployment. This is wrong, full stop. With today's litigation, we send a message to the president. Chicago will not be used as a political prop. Chicago will not be intimidated, and we will not be silent. And to our residents, know that we are fighting for you and using every legal avenue to protect your rights, dignity, and your humanity. And lastly, I want to be clear. When we talk about protecting our democracy, we are not just speaking about the right to vote every couple of years. We are speaking about something much deeper and much more profound. We go back to the labor leader, A. Philip Randolph's definition of democracy, and he said, "A community is democratic only when the humblest and weakest person can enjoy the highest civil, economic, and social rights that the biggest and most powerful possess." And that means that whether you are a billionaire or a thousandaire or a hundredaire, you deserve the exact same rights. The Constitution applies to all of our residents. This president wants to remake a country by the ultra-rich and for the ultra-rich, and he wants to use the military and his private militarized force to repress the rights of poor and working people. We prefer a government that is of, by, and for the people. And that's what we are fighting to protect. And thank you again to the governor, the attorney general, and to our congressional delegation and our county leaders, and to all of our partners that have demonstrated a great deal of unity and courage and persistence in this moment. Our city has faced tough times before, and every time we stood strong because we stood together. Let's continue to work together to protect our democracy and to fight for the future of our country. And with that, please welcome to the podium Cook County Board President Toni Preckwinkle.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm grateful to be here with the governor, with the attorney general, with the mayor, and members of our congressional delegation. Jesus Garcia, Jan Schakowsky, Mike Quigley, Raja Krishnamurthy, Brad Schneider, Robin Kelly, and Danny Davis. Thank you all. For generations, our neighborhoods have been built and rebuilt by working people who stand together in hard times. We're not strangers to struggle, and we're also not people who will be intimidated. The Trump administration's authorization of National Guard troops to enter Cook County and Chicago is a dangerous and reckless abuse of power. It's an affront to local governance, a violation of trust, and an insult to residents and local law enforcement officers who are working every day to make this city safer and more just. Slamming human beings to the ground, dragging them in the street. This is not immigration enforcement. It's intimidation. It's fear tactics. It's an illegal abuse of power dressed up as law and order. The truth is that our local leaders, our local police, our community organizations, and our residents have been working for years to reimagine what safety means. It's about building trust, investing in prevention, and healing the wounds that have festered far too long. We're working to replace fear with fairness, and this administration would rather send troops than send real help. We know what this looks like. Deploying the National Guard to Chicago sends a chilling message. It tells us that standing up to the Trump administration is something to be crushed, not heard. that local voices do not matter. The federal government decides to flex its power. This is not democracy. It's authoritarianism, plain and simple. I stand with Governor Pritzker, Attorney General Raoul, Mayor Johnson, and every local leader who rejects this federal overreach. Cook County will continue to stand firm in defense of our residents and our democratic values. Cook County will be filing an amicus brief in full support of the state of Illinois' lawsuit to block the Trump administration from deploying federalized National Guard troops in our communities. The federal government has been extremely clear that they're taking this action not to assist Illinois and local officials, but to use Chicago as a training ground for the military to fight what they dub the war from within. This is direct punishment of state and local governments' exercise of their sovereign right to enact constitutional laws and ordinances. We believe in accountability. We believe in community solutions. And we believe that local problems are best solved by local people. We are a proud, diverse, and resilient county. We fought for decades to build a government rooted in equity and inclusion. And we will not allow our efforts to be undermined by a federal government that chooses confrontation over collaboration. And now I'd like to bring to the podium Congressperson Jesus Garcia.
Thank you to all the leaders of Illinois and Chicagoland, Cook County, that are assembled here, demonstrating once again that Chicago and Illinois are places with strong shoulders, and that we will shoulder any injustice and we will tackle any injustice that comes our way as we live this very dangerous moment in our history. The President of the United States has turned the power of government against its own people. In my community, ground zero for these attacks, ICE has created a constant state of siege. People worry about their presence and their tactics every single hour of the day and night. We've seen masked ICE agents shoot into cars, engage in chemical warfare with bystanders, and even assault parents in front of their children. My grandson, who I am raising with my wife, and my wife are terrified. My grandson talks about it every little while, and he wants to know if his classmates will be safe, if their parents will be deported. But it's also never been just about immigrants. It's about controlling every one of our communities, brown, Asian, black, and everyone who is Chicagoland and Illinois. These are not actions of a democracy. These are actions of a tyrant. I took an oath when I became a citizen 46 years ago, and again when I was sworn in as a member of the United States Congress, and my loyalty is sworn to the U.S. Constitution, and only that. And my oath compels me to be here today with our leaders. Because when a president tries to federalize the National Guard, when he ignores court orders, when his agents break the law and brutalize our community, he is not protecting the country, he's waging war against the country. This lawsuit is not just about legal arguments, it's about accountability, it's about whether or not we'll allow tyranny to take root on our soil. Donald Trump is pushing the boundaries and daring to believe that the courts, the law, the Constitution no longer matter. We cannot stand for that. Don't lose the faith. We must fight as if the courts still matter, because they do. We must stand as if the law has meaning, because it does. And we must resist together, because only together can we defeat the assault on our communities. Chicago will not be intimidated. Illinois will not be silenced. History will remember where we stood in this moment, whether we stood tall or we shrank in fear. Today, we stand tall. Brevemente. Estamos viviendo en uno de los capítulos más peligrosos en la historia de nuestro país. El presidente de los Estados Unidos ha convertido el poder del gobierno en una arma en contra del pueblo. En mi comunidad, el epicentro de estos ataques, los encapuchados han creado un estado de sitio, disparando a carros, lanzando gases contra vecinos y asaltando a padres enfrente de sus niños. Esto no se trata de controlar a nuestras comunidades, no son acciones de una democracia. Cuando yo tomé el juramento de ciudadano hace 46 años y después como miembro del Congreso, mi lealtad fue a la Constitución.
Folks, we're going to break into this for this new feed that just popped into our newsroom here. Very scary looking scene. This is in the Louisville area, Kentucky, of course. You can see a small plane has crashed in a grassy area. We're told that this plane departed from Bowman Field, if you're familiar at all with the Louisville area, crashed in the Mount Washington area. Now, believe it or not, the pilot, who's the only person on this plane, is expected to survive here, only suffering minor injuries, which is absolutely incredible. You saw a few moments ago the condition of that plane. Looked like it was crumpled up a bit. You actually saw some debris in the plane, like there were pieces of branches perhaps with leaves sticking out. We're actually told, the assistant fire chief for Mount Washington reporting that the plane reportedly clipped a tree line. Okay, we got the shot back here. So you can see actually some of the branches there and the leaves on the plane itself. It also looks like it's kind of on belly up because the wheels are up. But this call came in around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Plane clipped the tree line, ended up crashing in this field. Once again, the pilot suffering just minor injuries, which is absolutely incredible given the condition of the plane itself. And anything else we can tell you about this? Looks like this is a Pitts S-1C special biplane, and it had arrived in the area at Bowman Field from which it took off on Sunday night. So still a lot of questions out there. We don't know the name of the pilot, only that they are expected to be okay. But I will keep an eye on this here on Live Impact News. And keep in mind as well, as we just have lost our shot here, we're actually about to turn you over to the news at 4. So a lot more headlines to come, not just of local nature, of course, big topic, government shutdown. We heard, of course, within the last several minutes or so, big dialogue over deployment of National Guard and legal battles over that. So we'll have much more in the evening news. We'll be back at 7 o'clock for Live Impact once again. Thanks so much for joining us here. I'm Vanessa Rufus.